Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, the NXTCC, and we are here today in Canada at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for what is expected to be a fast and furious round of racing, given the fact that as we follow the British Touring Car Championship calendar of 2022, and with Thruxton being unavailable in iRacing as of this time, we are of course at the wonderful circuit in Canada, which is fast, it is furious, and as you can see there from the limited circuit diagram we have available, it is quite similar to Thruxton in some respects. So that's why it's been selected this circuit, because the average lap speeds here are going to be much higher compared to those we've seen in the preceding two rounds, where of course last week we were at Brands Hatch, and the week before for the season opener we were at Donington National, and you can imagine that all will be on the line tonight as our drivers will need to carry the speed from corner to corner, be brave on the brakes at the heavy braking zones, and also have the best possible top speed come the end of each and every straight if they want to come out on top here over the course of the three races tonight. Speaking of that schedule and the three races, let's take you through the schedule. Times in British summertime, that's BST or UTC +1. It is the case that in just under 90 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with qualifying the 15-minute session to determine our grid for the first of our three races, after which we'll be heading straight into the gridding procedure and going racing in sprint race number 1 at approximately 8:15 this evening, a 20-minute race, and indeed all of our races tonight, 20-minute races, that's our sprint races, and the only strategy is to get to the front of your respective class, indeed the field, and get as many points in the bag come the finish. After race number 1, we'll be taking a brief break before returning for race number 2 at approximately 10 to 9. And here's the case, we'll be making our way to race number 3 at approximately 20 past 9 this evening. And of course, race number 3 with that live draw and that reverse grid. And it is the case that that reverse grid has proven to throw a few conundrums in the works for our drivers over the course of the first two rounds. Albeit it was the case, it was a top 6 reversal last time out at Brands Hatch compared to what was a top 9 reversal at Donington Park. But could we see a much higher reversal today at a circuit where track position may not be a guarantee of success? Where there's the case, of course, that reverse grid draw will be done by your host and commentator, and that is I, Paul at TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And here's the case that this broadcast is being brought to you live by 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to the official Next Gen Racing YouTube channel to tune in there. Here's the case, if you go to youtube.com and search for Next Gen Racing, you'll find us. Alternatively, if you are a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Or last but not least, if you're more of a Twitch user, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in live on Twitch. And regardless of which platform you're tuning into, if you do have the ability to say hi in the chat, do not be shy. Feel free to say hi and let us know your thoughts going into tonight, because it is the case, of course, that we can see all three chats over the course of tonight's proceedings. And you can imagine the racing is going to be fast and furious, and you never know, there could be some drama lying in wait. Indeed, there was plenty of drama last time out at what was the Brands Hatch circuit. We saw a multitude of drivers really come into the foray, and well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a brief moment. But here's the case, of course, we should look to the season ahead, indeed where we currently stand in the calendar. Well, it is the case that we are now making our way into round number 3 out of the 10-round season. Having completed our first 2 rounds, it is the 18th of August today, and therefore we are at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Previously, on the 11th of August, we were at Brands Hatch Indy, the first of the Series 2 visits to the Kentish circuit in the United Kingdom, whereby we drove around the smaller Indy loop, and it is the case that we'll be returning there at the end of the season for the full Grand Prix loop. However, prior to that, we're at Donington Park to kick things off in Leicestershire at the national variant of the circuit, and well, it is the case 2 rounds of racing so far have only seen the intensity of the racing increase from round to round, and you can imagine it's only going to be greater here tonight with so much speed on the line. After today, it will be the case. On the 25th of August, we'll be heading to Alton Park for round number 4, a circuit that is perhaps the ultimate circuit synonymous with touring car class racing, where it's in the British Touring Car Championship, or indeed other series that try to match touring car as well. It is the case at Alton Park, a very tight, twisty circuit, where it's all about being brave and really having to have the confidence and the overspeed if you want to go for a move, and we can expect plenty of door rubbing there. And then we head to Zandvoort Club Circuit in the Netherlands, which of course is our replication of the Croft Circuit that's not available in iRacing, and that will be on the 1st of September to wrap up the first half of the season. After which we'll be taking a brief break. That'll be our break week before we return. What is the Knockhill circuit in Fife? We head to Scotland for a circuit which is all about managing your confidence and indeed being brave as possible in carried speed over the undulations. And whoever comes out on top there will be looking very good as we kick off the second half of the season at Knockhill on the 15th of September. It'll then be the case that we make our way from Scotland, from the Fife circuit, all the way down to what is the Snetterton 300 circuit, circuit, and indeed it was the case that last weekend we did see British Touring Car Championship 2022 making its way around the Snetterton circuit, and our drivers will be making their way there on the 22nd of September, a circuit that, much like Alton Park, is synonymous with touring car class racing, given the fact that whilst the circuit is not as narrow as Alton Park, it has a whole variety of corners and straightaways, and there'll be plenty of battling all the way through the course of the 3 races. And then it will be the case for round number 8 on the 29th of September. We'll be heading over to Italy for what is essentially our second visit to Thruxton, albeit again because we do not have access to Thruxton in iRacing, it's not available in iRacing. It is the case we have chosen to go to the Monza circuit, the Grand Prix circuit, a very fast and furious circuit, albeit a bit of a different tone compared to the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, which is Thruxton Part 1, if you will, in the fact that the Monza circuit does have some incredibly heavy braking zones, indeed Monza Turn 1 anyone, and it is the case as well there. You can imagine we'll see some very fast laps and the battle in the slipstream. Our penultimate round, we'll see our drivers head back to the United Kingdom for the Silverstone National Circuit on the 6th of October, and we'll be bringing down the curtain on the 13th of October with the return to Brands Hatch, the second visit to the Kentish Circuit, and the Grand Prix loop awaits. And indeed, what a circuit to wrap up the calendar on. Indeed, a classic British circuit at that. But as we look from the season ahead, indeed the calendar, it is the case that after 2 rounds of racing, as we look to the championship standings overall, with regards to our drivers, where the Pro and the Pro-Am classes are weaved in amongst one another here in terms of points calculations, it is the case that Andrew Holmes currently leading the overall championship, only the best part of what is there, 8 points clear of Adam Delmont in P2, and these two have definitely been at the very tip of the spear with regards to those points exchanges through and through. Jamie Dorey in P3, however, having a much better run at what was the Brands Hatch circuit last time out, picking up the fastest lap in races 1 and 2, and also pole position, but it was the case some difficult performances in the races saw him lose out on some critical points, and well, he'll need to get plenty more points today if he wants to try and jump ahead of Delmont and Holmes to the top of the standings, because Mikey Doble was not in attendance last time out after his dominant run and indeed his perfect score of 79 points in round number 1, and he's not going to be in attendance again today due to personal circumstances, but Mikey Doble will be back, as we're to understand it, for round number 4, and when he is, you can imagine he'll be looking to pick up the points he's lost so far. There's John Higgins Jr. in P5, the number 60, a 7-point driver there. It is the case that he, in the Pro class, completed the top 5 of Pros, and he is ahead there of what is John Higgins Sr., and it is the case that John Higgins Sr., after a brilliant run of form, and really the star of the show at Brands Hatch, it is the case the Pro-Am driver there, your leading Pro-Am driver overall on 63 points, 10 clear of Matthew Addy. Now, Matthew Addy in P7 there, highlighted in red, and you'll see that a number of drivers' names are highlighted in red. This is to reflect that their car class assignment, in terms of whether they are Pro or Pro-Am, it is the case their class assignment is provisional at this point, and it is still up for debate, and more on that in a brief moment as to when we'll be finalising that information, indeed finalising our driver classes, but it is the case that Matthew Addy there in P7 on 53 points, only 4 clear of Lee Horn, and you can imagine that he'll be trying to creep away from Lee Horn and really take the fight to the top 5. And speaking of Lee Horn, the Pro driver having a difficult day at Brands Hatch, things were not to be for him, and now in P8, 2 points clear of both Nigel Stock and Gavin Gardner, and it is the case that Gardner there really did absolutely go on a charge in the Pro-Am class, having not been able to attend at Donington Park due to technical issues. It is the case that he was able to come out in full force and absolutely delivered on the stage of Brands Hatch and getting 47 points on the board, really getting his campaign off to a brilliant start. Meanwhile, behind him, the best of the rest outside the top 10, Ben Bennyworth there and Mark Sykes both on 33 points, but Bennyworth ahead of Sykes based on result countback, and it is the case the two of them looking to go toe-to-toe after Mark Sykes, of course, picking up some brilliant results at Brands Hatch, indeed on the podium within his class and overall at one point, as we remember correctly, and it is the case that Mark Sykes will be looking to continue that momentum tonight. John Burnham in P13, ahead of Paul Scott and Thomas Delaney, P14-15, and then we have Matt Emmons there on 20 points in P16. A difficult time at Brands Hatch to add to a difficult time at Donington Park. Will Emmons get a break? That's the question, and could he potentially get it here today? And then we have Rob McGregor there in P17 on 20 points as well, behind Matt Emmons based on result countback. And McGregor, much like at Donington Park, not having too much luck at Brands Hatch, and we do hope to see the tide turn for the HSG driver. And then we do have Colin Martin, Chris Daines and David Whitehouse completing the top 20. And I'm pleased to inform you that Chris Daines is back tonight after missing round number 2. It is the case we will see the Verano Motorsport driver charging out onto the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park circuit. Outside the top 20, it is the case we have Michael Crees there in P21, our touring car class driver in real life. It is the case racing in the BTCC. Join us on the circuit again tonight, currently on 6 points. Mark Harris-Smith, P22, Josh Brown, P23, and then Gaz Will and Jamie Jenkins completing the overall standings. Meanwhile, as we then look to the individual driver class standings, starting off with the pros, it is the case in the class of 8, Adam Delmont leads by 7 points on 118 versus Andrew Holmes on 111. These two, of course, exchanging points and places, and they have got Jamie Dorey to worry about in P3 there. And as we previously said, Dorey, if he can have a better run of luck, it is the case we may be seeing Jamie Dorey jump to the top of those standings. But indeed, the top 3 separated by only 15 points at this time, as we then see John Higgins Jr., meanwhile, in P4 on 96 points. Only 1 point clear of Lee Horn. And unfortunately, we're hearing that Lee Horn has got technical issues, so won't be racing in race 1, but should be back starting at the back of the grid for race number 2. And thank you for letting us know, Lee, in the YouTube chat there. And I hope you're doing well otherwise, but sorry to hear about those technical issues. But Lee Horn, of course, will have some restricted points earnings tonight. And, well, can he move up into the top 4, indeed the top 3, from those 95 points? Mikey Doble, of course, not in participation last week and not here again today, will stay on 79 points. But you can imagine our absolute firecracker of a driver will be coming back for round number 4 on fire and indeed looking to get as many points as soon as possible. And then Matt Emmons and Chris Daines complete the pro standings. Meanwhile, it is the case in the Pro-Am class, the second of our 2 classes here. It is John Higgins Sr. who leads on 113 points. Indeed, open up an advantage now of what is 21 points over Matthew Addy there. And Higgins, if he can continue this momentum, he could finally put some distance between himself and a P2 through to P6, which is very close. Indeed, you can see there the points gap between Matthew Addy and Mark Sykes. So in fact, if we take it down to P7 to Paul Scott, that points gap is 28 points from 2nd to 7th. And with Gavin Gardner closing the distance very rapidly, it would seem, you can imagine we could see a huge shake-up here. And if Higgins Sr. is caught up in the mix tonight, you can imagine he'll get pulled right into that battle, which of course is what all of our drivers will want. But that's not what Higgins Sr. will want in his championship aspirations. But in between Higgins and Paul Scott, we have, of course, Matthew Addy, then Nigel Stock in P3. A difficult run of form for Nigel Stock at Brands Hatch. Had some bad luck in the early races, and as a result, he was able to bring that momentum together towards the end. But you can imagine he was hoping for a good run overall. And then Ben Bennyworth in P4, John Burnham P5, Mark Sykes in P6, Paul Scott P7, and then 5 points behind Paul Scott, of course, Gavin Gardner, with Rob McGregor and Thomas Delaney completing the top 10 there, separated by only 2 points, McGregor and Delaney. And then just outside the top 10, a further 24 points back, Colin Martin, who we didn't see last time out at what was Brands Hatch. We saw him at Donington, and he may be joining us tonight, depending on his availability. And then Michael Creed's returning from 30 points. We look forward to seeing if he can creep into the top 10. David Whitehouse in P13, ahead of Gaswell and Mark Arrowsmith. And then we have Josh Brown and Jamie Jenkins completing the standings, P16, P17. And as we come to our Teams Championship, it is the case we see that NXTGEN Racing Orange continue to lead on 220 points. They are the best part of what is their 64 points clear of NXTGEN Racing Blue. And then we do have Team HSR, who really came out in force at Brands Hatch, now up to P3 on 138 points, only 4 points clear of NXTGEN Racing Green. But you can imagine HSR will be looking to build upon that momentum tonight and close up to NXTGEN Racing Blue. Outside the top 4 in P5, that's Prime stacking with Solo Racing. That's Bennyworth, Burnham and Collins, putting a good combination together. The best of the rest in P5 on 62 points. 4 clear of Verano Motorsport, made up of Daines, Gardner and James, of course. And then we do have Crest Autosport with Pebbles, SVP and Mark with Ignium, and JBW Racing, who complete the team's standings there. And indeed, our 9 teams competing in this series. We also do have some privateers in the mix. But we come from our standings then to our circuit for today. And of course, it is what we'd like to refer to as Canadian Thruxton. It is the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, also known as MoSport. This circuit, located in Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada, is a circuit which, when you look at it, based on the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, thank you to them as always for our circuit maps, does look very Thruxton-esque. And it is the case our drivers will start on a short start-finish straight in the run to turn number 1, which is a downhill right-hand apex. And as they charge out to turn number 1, it's then through an undulation uphill and into the dip that goes through Clayton Corner at turn number 2, before they then need to make their way into Quebec Corner at turn number 3. The sweeping left to right combination will see our drivers have a lot of speed behind them, and they'll need to carry as much speed as they can between each corner. And as they exit out Quebec Corner, it'll be about getting on the throttle as soon as possible and avoiding the understeer in order to charge all the way down to Sir Stirling Moss Corner at turn number 5. Of course, named after the infamous British driver. And as our drivers charge down the hill through turn number 4 and into 5, they'll need to be brave on the brakes, because that's the slowest corner on the circuit. A double right-hand apex corner, and they need to get on the power as soon as possible when clearing the second part of Moss Corner, because then they have the long run down the Mario Andretti straightway all the way down to turn number 8. And we'll see our drivers reach their highest possible top speeds in the charge to turn number 8 before they make their way into the right into left into right combination of the S's into White's Corner, turns 8 through to 10, where we could see some overtaking moves being made around the outside to inside or the inside to outside. But plenty to look forward forward to here, and we'll ride on board with our drives in qualifying to give you a feel of what it's like to drive around the motorsport circuit. But as for our race rules, we should remind you that in terms of setups, this is a fixed setup series where our drivers are running baseline setups as provided by iRacing, and it is the case that there is no setup changes permitted over the course of the racing other than brake bias. In general, driver classes shall be finalised after round number 3, so you'll recall earlier we saw a number of drivers' names that were in red. Those are the drivers who are currently being looked at for a change of class, potentially based on their performances in the opening 3 rounds. But after today, it is very likely, if not definite, that our driver classes shall be finalised, our pros will be confirmed and our primes will be confirmed, and we'll go into the remainder of the season with our drivers in those categories. In terms of the sprint races, it is the case that the race 1 grid shall be set based on the results of qualifying. The race 2 grid shall be set based on the results of race number 1. So it is the case whoever wins in race number 1 will start on pole for race number 2, and whoever comes to last starts right at the back. And then for race number 3, that is where the grid will be set by a reverse grid based on the results of race number 2, albeit with the addition of the reversal position being drawn live from between P6, the 6th place, and 12th place, or P12. And it is the case, are we doing that live draw on air? And we'll have to wait to see what the number will be. But then on top of that as well, it is the case in terms of drive-through penalties. For instance, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. But that's enough about rules and regulations. I know what we're all here for. We're here for the racing. And now we look back to our live pictures here. And indeed, we do look as our drivers make their way around. And we look to the fast challenger, of course, for Verano Motorsport. And that is Gavin Gardner, who last time out at Brands Hatch in the Audi RS3 really subverted expectations in terms of what the Audi RS3 can do. And was absolutely flying, it had to be said, over the course of the 3 races, and really found his form, and in the end brought home what was a win, and not just in class in race number 3, but also brought the overall win home, the first Pro-Am driver to bring home an overall win in the series. And as he makes his way through turn number 9 at this point, he'll be absolutely buoyant from last time out, and indeed it was absolute brilliance down in the Verano Motorsport garage. They were absolutely jumping up and down enjoying it, and I can see one of the Verano Motorsport guys in the YouTube chat there, Sean Cranley's watch. Hope you're doing well, Sean. And indeed it does look as though Gavin Garner coming out in full force here, currently the fastest of our Pro-Am drivers in this final practice session in that P4 position. But indeed it is the case, the final warm-up and practice session is just one part of the evening. Qualifying, of course, is another part where it's all about that single fastest lap, but it really comes down to the races staying out of trouble and delivering lap after lap. As we look from Gavin Gardner here, we do look to Nigel Stock, indeed another Pro-Am driver running for Crest Autosport with Pebbles, and the Honda Civic Type R driver drifting his way there into turn number 8, taking a bit of grass on his turning point on those left-hand wheels, just using a bit too much width for the circuit, and well, he's learned then not to do that again, because he will not want to be drifting into turn number 8 at such a high speed. But as he makes his way on out there, we're looking forward to seeing what Nigel Stock can achieve. And as we look from our 2 Pro-Am drivers to one of our pros, here is Adam Delmont, the NXTGEN Racing Orange driver, making his way through turn number 8. And well, what can we expect from Delmont tonight? I think we can expect him to really come in full force after what's a very difficult day at Brands Hatch. We saw in all 3 races him getting into trouble, whether it was his own doing or instance with other drivers, and in one race in particular he managed to find himself going off towards the end of a lap 3 times, and indeed had to make recovery drives. But we do have a lot of Pro-Am drivers here today, a limited number of pros in the mix, and you can tell which class our drivers belong to based on the coloured slash, which is between their name and their position number in the time and town on the left hand side of your screen. So as we look at Adam Delmont here, you'll notice that between that 3rd place on the time and town and his name, or A Delmont, it is the case we've got a green slash which represents that he is part of the pro driver class. And then meanwhile, by comparison, we do look to John Higgins Sr., for example, and well, in the pink purple there, it is the case that pink purple represents that John Higgins Sr. is part of the Pro-Am class. But as he makes his way on around, we do say hello there to Gaz Will in the Facebook chat. I hope you're doing well, Gaz, and well, we do hope to see you out on circuit in the meantime. But it is the case we look from John Higgins Sr. here to our touring car driver, of course, of Michael Creed, and running in a livery. I do believe that's been designed by Mark Sykes Designs, and indeed if you are looking for an iRacing livery, or indeed a livery for a set of course of Competizione as well, a custom livery which is to your specifications, indeed made with a mastercraft hand, it is the case that Mark Sykes Designs is the #1 place to go to. And you can see it here, it is the case that Michael Creed for NXTGEN Racing Blue are running the livery that is on his 2022 touring car class car in the BTCC. Of course, not quite running in a Honda, instead running in the Vauxhall, but we try to bring it alive as much as possible here as he makes his way down through turn number 2 and in towards 3, and we're currently running P9 in this final warm-up session. And after enjoying the racing at Donington, it had to be said, he really looked as though he was getting into it and the pace was building. You can imagine that he'll be firing on all cylinders tonight and trying to mix it up in the midfield. Could we perhaps even see some surprises and a few bumps and scrapes? You never know. But as we do look from Michael Crees up towards what is Chris Daines here. Chris Daines missing last week's round, of course, and the Danishman here, Verano Motorsport, one of the very fast pro drivers, and we're very glad to see he's brought the Audi RS3 onto the circuit here today. And well, how will he get on? We're about to find out the story here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and it is the case that we'll find out initially in the qualifying session as all our drivers now get ready to head to the pit lane. And indeed, they all jump to the pit lane, and we get the transition into qualifying forthwith. As we do wait for our drivers to start making their way out to the pit lane, I do believe it is the case that Jamie Dorey, our first driver to make his way out to the pits, and as the next gen orange driver does, it is the case, of course, he will have that priority in terms of he'll have the clear track in front of him, and he can determine whether he decides to essentially pop himself back into the order to try and find a bit of draft, alternatively just to try and find a little bit of momentum and wait for the circuit to heat up more. Now, this qualifying session being 15 minutes in length, and the fact that the lap around here really is broken up into 2 parts, there is an emphasis here on trying to find some slipstream, particularly towards the second half of the lap. Now, to articulate this, you can see from the circuit map, the opening half of the lap, all the way in the run, all the way up to turn number 5 at Stirling Corner. It is, sorry, at Moss Corner, we should say. So Stirling and Moss, using his name before, and I must not abridge it, I apologise. It is the case at Moss Corner here in the run to it. You don't really want to be in too much of draft for the simple reason that dirty air can really hurt your ability to turn through the opening few corners. But as soon as you exit from Moss Corner, the story changes. We've got a very long back straight here, down the Andretti straightway, and this is where you want that slipstream. You really will benefit from it. You'll gain 2 to 4 miles an hour by the end of it, in fact, if not a little bit more, and we can already see that already in the fact that we do have, I believe that is Mark Sykes, tucked in very close behind Jamie Dorey as they head up into turn number 8 into the S as they go, and that is where you want the toe for the remainder of the lap, because it will benefit you massively, albeit you may have to struggle with a little bit of dirty air heading into the final couple of corners. But speaking of making his way out to the final couple of corners, we ride on board here with Jamie Dorey for a lap of the motorsport circuit. So as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 here, no real braking marker other than the lighting post on the left hand side, and rolling the car through the right hand there, you can see the depression in the road, and as he rolls the car out, now bring it back over to the right hand side to open up turn number 2, essentially having to drive into a blind apex here. And you can see as he broke downhill, the car lifting up and becoming unsettled at the rear, but a nice run through for Dorey before heading into the wet corner at turn number 3, and again braking as late as possible to go before where's the late apex, and as soon as he gets clear of that apex, getting the power down, didn't quite nail that corner as much as he would have liked to there. You could see he left a lot on the table in terms of using the circuit width. As he goes flat out here down the hill through turn number 4, he now points the car in a straight line and slams on the anchors, coming all the way down to second gear into Moss Corner, clearing the first apex and then clambering over the second apex in first gear before now charging all the way down the Andretti straightway through the kinks of 6 and 7 and up towards turn number 8. Now, of course, a very fast-paced lap so far, and as he charges all the way down towards turn number 8 at this point, this provides the drivers with a breather in qualifying to really think about how the lap's gone so far and then get themselves ready and steeled for what is the final 3 corners. It's only 3 corners, but they're very tricky corners given their relative average speed, and as he breaks his way here into turn number 8, and there's no real braking markers on this circuit either. Our drivers really have to find where's that muscle memory and that rhythm. It is the case he rolls through turn number 9, the left into right into the final corner. As he rolls through that final corner there in third gear, getting nice on the exit and heading to that timeline. What will it be for Dorey? Our first line lap of this qualifying session. Well, he comes on through and it is a 26.89, and what a good lap there set by Jamie Dorey. Indeed, it will be one that will be beaten, but it definitely sets the tempo nice and early, as he is already 1.5 seconds faster than Ben Bennyworth has set a time, as we do see more times coming on in from our Pro-Am drivers. But as they come on through, we do see Paul Scotch just made his way on through, and in this case the Audi RS3 driver there going P3 for a brief moment on a 27.957, but then Gavin Gardner goes at P4, all the times piling in very quickly. But Dorey definitely setting a good opening lap. He managed to find good lap time, but we've still got plenty more laps to come from our drivers, including the likes of Matthew Addy here, as we do see the Briton making his way down the hill through turn number 4 and up towards 5. And as we do watch Addy making his way in towards the second half of the lap very shortly, we see there from Gazwill in the Facebook chat saying, we'll be back next week. Currently have my feet up relaxing in the lakes, waiting to see the action. Well, I'm very happy to hear you being able to put your feet up Gaz, and well, I hope you're having a great time off. And we also say hello there to Katie Eames in the Facebook chat. And well, it is the case, checking in from the lakes with terrible Wi-Fi. Well, I hope you're having a nice holiday, Katie. And well, just put your feet up and enjoy the racing action if the Wi-Fi will let you. But as we do see here, Matthew Addy making his way up towards turn number 8 at this point. It is the case. His lap so far been a relatively comfortable lap, albeit he hasn't pushed the wing out too far. And it is the case, of course, getting himself set up. And that's the key thing here as well at Motorsport. You need to settle into a rhythm. This circuit is very momentum dependent. It is the case if you start to fall out of sync, or is the case the car starts to step out on you, then you start to make mistakes very quickly. And we've seen that Addy has once again had an invalidated lap. He's yet to set a valid lap, so he must have missed that off camera. Perhaps he ran wide at turn number 1, but meanwhile telling somebody who has not run wide at turn number 1, or if he has, he's run within the track limits. It is Adam Delmont who snatched pole position provisionally with a 26.242 as Chris Staines almost follows up behind him there, only 1.5 tenths off. But Adam Delmont now the man to be overall in the pro class as he heads on down towards what is Quebec corner. As he rolls his way through turn number 3 here, you can see in terms of those lap times, the top 3 really trying to break away. Well, the top 2 in particular, Delmont and Daines, they are the best part of 3 tenths clear of Jamie Dorey in P3. And then we do have separating P3 through to P10, what is a margin of approximately 1.1 seconds. But then as we head more and more into the midfield, we can see how close those lap times are. Indeed, everybody trying to deliver a lap as soon as possible, as we do see John Higgins Jr. there improving to P5. That's P4 in the pro class effectively. And the HSG driver moving up to that P5 and continuing to charge on as he makes his way down the hill. And well, I keep saying HSG, but I believe it's actually HSR, and I do apologise, I do not know where I've got HSG from. It's acronyms on the brain, no doubt. But as he makes his way through turn number 3, the HSR driver definitely trying to deliver now as he makes his way onto another lap here, and still quite a way to go before we even get to the halfway points of this qualifying session. So our drivers are enjoying plenty of lap time and plenty of laps in order to set the best possible time. But you can imagine as the clock continues to tick closer and closer towards 15 minutes being up, there will be that pressure on our drivers to find the ultimate lap. And well, it is the case there. We do see, well, the HSR drivers all stacking up in the line here, all 3 of them in the Hyundai Elantra, and all trying to stay together in order to be able to get the tow, particularly down this back straight. Now, in terms of the runner form of cars, of course, it was the case that at Brands Hatch we saw was quite an interesting contrast between the 4 cars, we should say, with the Hyundai Elantra having the fastest qualifying lap, no doubt about that, and the strongest initial race pace, but really falling off towards the end of each race, particularly in the final 5 to 7 minutes. Meanwhile, the Veloster and the Honda Civic Type R both seemed to go very well in the midfield of the racing, and they came alive in the final few minutes. And then the Audi RS3 was a bit of an unknown and really sprung to life depending on who drove it. And Gavin Garner really being the perfect demonstrator of the Audi RS3 in action. At Donington, of course, we did see how strong the Elantra was compared to its peers, whereby it seems to be in a bit of a class of its own. And here today, the story is very different. This is an Audi RS3 track, and we are expecting the Audi to go very well in both qualifying and also in the race itself, as we see Rob McGregor there getting it a bit wrong, and as he tries to return to the circuit here, Rob McGregor I think just carrying a bit too much speed, and now having to return to the circuit, albeit well off of his teammates, as we reach the halfway point of this qualifying session and now head into the second half. But as we do look around here, and in particular we do jump over to Michael Crees, who is yet to set a time, and I think just trying to find where those track limits are and also how far he can push that Honda as he makes his way through the final corner. And we jump on board here with Crees, or Creasy as he's known to friends, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, it is the case finally put another time on the board at 27.091, and we now ride on board for a whole lap here with Michael Crees. As he heads up towards turn number 2 at this point, keeping the car over to the right and rolling it into the downhill run. And you can see there how the car steps out initially. He has to reset the car in terms of the momentum before then bringing it into the second part of the apex or 2. But a nice downhill drop there, and he understeers a little bit wide under braking through 3. That's going to cost him a bit of time. That will cost him about 2 to 3 tenths in the run down towards turn number 5 as he heads and brings the car over to the right now in order to carry all the speed through turn number 4. And you can get the picture of the first half of the lap, really blind apex galore. He now brakes hard down into turn number 5. You can hear that the car scraping as he makes his way in the run to turn number 5, and out of it he goes, now accelerating back up the gearbox here, down the back straight, and as he charges on through, well, how's this lap going so far? Well, sector 1 was not an improvement compared to his previous best, However, what about sector 2? He'll be crossing that sector 2 line very shortly when he makes his way just before the braking zone for what is turn number 8. And as he comes up towards that, has he improved his previous best? No, not quite. So he's going to improve. It will all be on the final portion of this lap as he makes his way into the first of the 2 S-curves here at turn number 8. Taking plenty of apex curve there, but I think the car actually getting hooked on that high apex curve as he rolls through 9 and into 10. A bit of an unsettled enter lap here, and I think Crees still just trying to find where the lap time is as he makes his way to the timeline. As he heads on across here, it is the case. Does he improve as he comes on through? No, he does not, but he almost matches his previous best. So it is the case there. Looking consistent is Michael Crees in his qualifying session. Oh, goodness me, as he rejoins there just in time and dodging what was the HSR car coming out of the pits. And I believe he may be jumping to the pits. But meanwhile, Chris Danes, your fastest driver in this qualifying session at the moment, provisionally on pole, and he's still got 5 minutes to go here. He is almost 4.5 tenths clear of Adam Delmont behind. So I think for Chris Danes, it really is the case of Verano Motorsport driver here delivering the goods. And well, we're getting flashbacks right now. So you may remember the Next Gen Racing LMP Proto GT3 Championship, which was contested in the Apex Racing Academy lobby by Chris Danes, and also what was, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe it was Gavin Gardner, but it may have been Sean Cranley swashed behind the wheel of the GT3 car. I can't quite remember off the top of my head without conferring to my notes, but it is the case. We did see Verano Motorsport pull off an absolute blinder at the Motorsport circuit in the feature race. Some brilliant team tactics, and could we see some team tactics coming on in here with Gavin Gardner definitely trying to benefit from the tow from his teammate here. And I think Danes at this point, we're feeling as though he's got that pole all hooked up, hook, line and sinker, and he now wants to bring Gardner along for the ride, because you can imagine if they were to lock out the front row, they can make those Audis very wide at the start of the race and then essentially try and pull off into the distance. As we do see here, Gardner coming to that timeline. Does he improve this time around? He rolls his way through. He does. He improves to P2. And it is the case, he is only 2.5 tenths off of Chris Danes. So it does look as though the teamwork is making the dream work here for Verano Motorsport. We've still got 4 minutes to go, but they are definitely showing that teamwork spirit, and they want to lock out that front row, which of course makes sense at the end of the day, because if they can start in the front row together, they can really try and make it a 1-2 overall and a win in each class, both in the Pro and the Pro-Am class. But meanwhile, looking from them to one of our Hyundai Elantra drivers here of what is Higgins, and that is Higgins Senior here, the Pro-Am driver making his way through what is turn number 3 in the draft behind Rob McGregor here. And you can see Team HSR all in a line, all 3 drivers line astern as they make their way down towards turn number 5, and as they come charging on down the hill, it is the case that Elantra just not looking as hooked up here. But to be fair, we do know the HSR drivers are bringing that Elantra package and trying to bring it to life each and every round, and they've talked about how the fact that each round is a learning experience for them, and it is the case they're finding that pace and also finding out more about the car as they go through each and every race. And you can imagine that whilst it's not looking too strong in qualifying right now with Higgins Senior down in P13, meanwhile it's the case that McGregor P6, they're doing quite well there, McGregor, and there is the case that Higgins Junior in P10. So McGregor really the best of the trio right now. You can imagine they'll all try and make their way gradually up the order. If they can't do it in qualifying, they'll do it in the race in terms of just trying to keep out of the trouble and gain places little by little. But speaking of gaining places, as we ride on board here with Higgins Senior as he comes to the end of his laps to being gained places, we now take the Elantra for a ride here with Higgins at the helm as he rolls his way into turn number 1, and we'll see the differences here between the Elantra and the Honda Civics that we've ridden on board with previously. As he makes about turn number 1 here, getting a whole box full of revs, hitting the rev limiter in the run up towards turn number 2 there. A little bit of a late upshift, and that's going to cost him some time as he exits altitude. Nicely done there, and heading into turn number 3. You can see how the car's stepping out and getting a very good apex at turn number 3, bringing the car through into the apex curve and heading down towards turns 4 and 5 now in the charge. And as he does, he can hit right up towards the rev limiter, not leaving there any breathing room for the engine, and heading on down. Cars pulling over to that. That was Nigel Stock pulling off slightly to avoid all the qualifying cars coming on through. We've got a car off in front. And in fact, that is Nigel Stock off. My apologies. So it is the case. I'm not quite sure who that was pulling over to the side. As they make the way on through, it is the case that I think Higgins Senior at this point won't be thinking about that. He'll be thinking about just trying to put in an even better lap to moving up from what is now P14. Albeit, to give you an idea how close it is, Higgins from Delaney in P13. In this case, there's a gap of only 16 thousandths between the two of them. Matt Evans jumps up to P8. We can see that Rob McGregor taking a bit of grass in the run into the S's, and as they make the way on through, it is the case that Higgins Senior really having to fight with the steering wheel. It's the case that Elantra just not wanting to rotate into turn number 8. And it does look as though there is a bit of a struggle going on in the cockpit as he makes his way out of the final corner. Will this be an improvement? I don't think it will, or if it is, it's going to all come down to that final sector. And no, Higgins Sr. does not improve this time around, and with only a minute left on the clock, plus the final lap our drivers are on, now it all comes down to delivering that last lap. And there are two drivers who have yet to set a lap. Lee Horn, of course, with those technical issues, we're not expecting him to come out, as Jamie Dorey moves up to P2 at the deadlock, and Mark Sykes up to P5. But meanwhile, we see that David Whitehouse yet to set a lap, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 5, it is the case, the Hyundai Elantra driver here, and of course the Renault throwback livery, dating back to the Super Touring Car era in the BTCC of what was in the 90s. He gets it a bit wrong at Moss Corner, where if he can get himself back up to speed, I don't think he's going to make it to another lap. I think David Whitehouse may be starting from the back of the grid. A very difficult day here, but of course learning all the way, much like at Brands Hatch. But as we do look from Whitehouse to what is Jamie Dorey here on his final lap now, and Dorey on that previous lap jumping up to P2, dethroning what was the second half of Verano Motorsport in the form of Gavin Gardner from the front row. As we see their KTMs to the Facebook chat wishing the best luck to Evans, Addy and Horn, where is the case, of course, with Horn not out on circuit, it will come to what is Matthew Addy and also Emmons at the moment in terms of trying to deliver, but we see there just behind Jamie Dorey trying to deliver in the lone Veloster, or one of a limited number of Velosters we should really say, as the checker flag is out and Chris Daines is in the pits. He won't be setting another time. It is, as we see, Mark Sykes here currently P5, but he gets a whole face full of understeer there into turn number 8 and just about pulls it off the racing line and keeps it off the line, as we saw Creeds coming on through, but Mark Sykes will not be improving. As meanwhile, can Dorey do anything to upset that pole position with Chris Daines? I don't think so, unless he's had a magical final sector. No, Jamie Dorey does not improve. Does Creeds improve, or Sykes? No, neither of them improve. Who else is out there? We see John Burnham here. Haven't really talked about John Burnham since talking about him in the standings. And as he makes his way through the final corner here, currently in P15, can he find a bit more time out there? It doesn't look as though it's going to happen. In fact, he'll be starting P15 at best. We've still got some drivers out there on laps, including Matt Emmons here. And as Emmons makes his way down the back straight, well, he is currently in P8, and he's right in the midfield there. And you can see if he can gain a couple attempts, he could jump up into P7, but he's really got to go some to get up into the top 6. That is how strong our top 6 and particularly our top 4 are compared to the rest of the field. But as Emmons makes his way into the final corner, he was faster compared to his previous best in Sector 1. His Sector 2 wasn't quite up to scratch, but as he comes to the timing line here, Sector 3 was not as strong as before, but it is the case he does not improve in the end. And I believe the only driver now potentially on the lap is David Whitehouse here. He may have snuck it to the line, but as he makes his way on through, will we see a lap time set from David Whitehouse, or is it too late in the day? As we see the checkered flag waving there from Barney Flag, Whitehouse comes to the timeline, and as he does, what's the time going to be? Well, in the end, it is not classified, so David Whitehouse will be starting from the back of the grid. But indeed, what a qualifying session in the end. But it is Chris Daines who has taken pole position ahead of Jamie Dorey in the Pro class, and in the Pro class it's Gavin Gardner who has taken pole position ahead of this man Mark Sykes. But Mark Sykes once again showing the pace of that Veloster, and you can imagine he'll be looking to convert that into some podium finishes in the races here tonight in the Pro class, as our drivers now make their way to the pit lane and we get ready to form the grid for race number 1. So as the grid is now in the process of being formed, let's take you through that grid for our opening race of the evening. It is the case that we do have, starting off pole position, qualifying on pole overall and in the Pro class, Chris Daines from Verano Motorsport, the Dane out-qualifying Jamie Dorey by 1.5 tenths in the end, and the Next Gen Racing Orange driver line up P2. Behind them, the pole sitter for the Prime class from Verano Motorsport is Gavin Gardner in P3, alongside him Adam Delmont P4. Then we have Mark Sykes, the Next Gen Blue driver, joined by the Next Gen Green driver of Matthew Addy, the two primes there on row number 3, with Rob McGregor and Matt Emmons line up on row number 4. And then we have Nigel Stock and Paul Scott, both of them creeping into the top 10. The Crest Autosport with Pebbles driver just outpacing the Next Gen Racing Blue driver in the end by what was a margin of no more than a tenth. Then John Higgins Jr. and Michael Crees line up on row number 6, and they are followed on row number 7 by what is there Tom Delaney and John Higgins Sr. And then we have John Burnham and Ben Bennyworth, the prime stacking with solo teammates, line up on that 8th row. Mark Arrowsmith will then line up with David Whitehouse on row at number 9, and if Lee Horn's able to make it to the grid, he'll be starting on his lonesome in P19 on the final row. But as we look from the grid standings to the grid itself, it is the case that we are going racing in no more than 40 seconds time, and will it be Chris Daines who leads our drivers coming the exit of turn number 1, or will it be the case that we see some surprises very early on? It's a short run down towards turn number 1, and Daines on that inside line. He won't be on the racing line, so it'll be difficult for him to navigate, but if he can get a good launch, then he may be able to outdrag the Honda Civic of Jamie Dorey down towards the corner. But we know that Honda Civic very easy to launch by comparison with the Audi RS3. It's a very smooth launch, and can Dorey pull it off from the front row, take the lead, and then potentially force Chris Daines backwards through the field and try to hold on for those points? Well, we are only now moments away from going racing, and indeed it would seem that the gridding process is complete, and we await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for race number 1 here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And as they charge them down towards turn number 1, Jamie Dorey getting a very bad start. In fact, Gavin Garner getting a brilliant launch, and Adam Delmont now battling with Jamie Dorey in the run through turn number 1 here. But it's a very slow start from Jamie Dorey, and in the end he has fallen back to a degree as all of our drivers make their way into turn number 2. And on cold tyres here, this is where it's all about being smart at the brakes. As we see Crees tap in the back there. Oh, but Nigel Stock being pushed along as they make their way out of 2 and up into 3. Crees going on the offensive very early on in the day up the inside of Nigel Stock, and I don't think the Stock will be too happy with that whack to the back, but they have both survived it for the time being. As meanwhile Rob McGregor here, the HSR driver, in what is the light blue and green Elantra, battling from the outside to inside versus what is there, we believe that is Matt Emmons, and Emmons dropping a place, being on that difficult inside line through turn number 4, and as he loses a place, he loses another place there to Michael Crees as well. Crees is absolutely flying since the start of this race. He may not have had it in qualifying as such, but he's definitely got it when he goes into the race themselves. But everybody has safely made it through. The only driver who's had a difficult start is John Burnham, who's starting from the pit lane. I think with a technical issue of some description, but we see Matt Evans here having to go defensive as he gets ahead in the draft versus Crees up into turn number 8, but will he be able to hold on? That's the question. Indeed, he's already starting to cause a separation in the field. As further back there we see Tom Delaney losing the place on the inside from John Higgins Jr. went round the outside to inside through the S's, but as they make their way through the final corner we see David Whitehouse there as well, trying to close up to the back of Bennyworth, and his teammate Mark Arrowsmith just a place further up ahead. But after 1 lap then, it is Chris Daines who leads the field by 0.8 of a second ahead of Gavin Gardner in P2, followed by Jamie Dorey in P3, then Adam Delmont P4. We have Matthew Addy in P5, followed by Mark Sykes in P6 as they come down through turn number 2. Rob McGregor P7 being chased by Matt Evans, who's really leading the second bunch of the pack in P8, followed by Michael Crees P9, one of our biggest gainers at the start as he goes defensive here into turn number 3 after slightly running wide at turn number 2. And then John Higgins Jr. P10, and then the best of the rest outside the top 10. Tom Delaney in P11, and Delaney here having to wait for an opportunity as we see John Higgins Jr. giving Crees a little bit of a push along here, trying to give him a bit of motivation to get a hurry up as they make the way down towards turn number 5 once again. And I think it's the case that Higgins Jr. trying to send a message here, which is if you don't get the move on, I will, as we see Higgins Sr. up the inside of Delaney there into Moss Corner and getting the move done, or has he, as it will be a drag race now all the way down towards the S's. And as they head on up, we see a bit further up the road here, Rob McGregor battling side by side with Matthew Addy, and in the draft there are Mark Sykes, and a bit further up from them we also see Dorey and Delmont battling side by side. It is the case as they make the way on in, Delmont up the inside into the S's, gains the place. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes finds himself being attacked up the inside to outside by the HSR racing driver. Oh, but what is Rob McGregor? And as they make the way into left-hander, McGregor right now just not able to quite get the move done, but he does get ahead of Matthew Addy as they make the way out to the final corner and down towards turn number 1, and once again but it is nip and tuck all the way. And meanwhile we look from them to a bit further back and we ride on board here with Ben Bennyworth, who's looking for the move on Paul Scott as they make way into turn number 1, but as they do here, Bennyworth has to back out. The prime stacking with solo racing driver, it is a case taking a bit of grass with them there as they make the way up towards turn number 2, and as they come charge on through we see somebody going slowly. That is Burnham, who is a lap down. He's left the pit lane, albeit he is a lap down after leaving the pit lane. That's unfortunate for Burnham, but as they make the way into turn number 3, Bennyworth having to wait as we see Delaney there out of position. I think he's gone a bit deep into the corner, and Bennyworth will look for the opportunity here to try and come on through into P13. And as they make the way down towards Moss Corner here, the acceleration of the Audi is good, but it's not enough right now as he tries to balance the car on the throttle in the draft heading into Moss Corner. And well, he'll look for the run out of the corner here, tries to open up the second apex as much as possible, but you can see how it is the case. The Honda driver there of Delaney just getting the better run. And as they make the way all the way down the back straight, we take a look back at the pass that was made between Mark Sykes and Rob McGregor only moments ago. Well, this was they made the way into turn number 2 on this lap, and as they came into left hand, you can see McGregor here trying to go around the outside. I think there's a bit of contact between the two drivers, in fact, and McGregor, well, he was on the very ragged edge there, and fortunately for Matthew Addy was able to back out in time, but then Emmons tried to go outside to inside on the cutback here, but he wasn't close enough to try and make it work. And as we return to the live pictures, it is the case we see here Bennyworth will charging after what is Tom Delaney in front of him as they head down towards turn number 1. Once again, no change between these two at the moment, and I can hear that it's the case that as they make the way on through, our race leader of Chris Danes just gradually gapping the field with Gavin Garner, his teammate, behind. But the question there from Sean Cranny Swash in the YouTube chat, what happened to Nigel Stock on lap number 1? We will try and get a replay of what exactly happened to Stock earlier on in the race very shortly, but we can see it is the case here. Rob McGregor going on the offensive versus Mark Sykes, and as they make the way through what is their turn number 3 and heading down towards turn number 4, well, Rob McGregor at this point really putting that pressure on Sykes. Can he find a way up into the top 5? Not this time. He's going to have to wait, but they're concertinaing together into Moss Corner here, and Mark Sykes right now really having to go defensive each and every corner to try and hold on to that top 5 finish. It does feel as though for him, he has hit a bit of a wall in terms of pace, and now he's got to get out the defense as much as possible. I don't think it's going to be long here before McGregor's able to try and draft his way on through. He's up the inside, and you can see the Elantra really showing its legs in the initial run down the straight as they head towards the higher gears. This is where the Elantra starts to become a little bit unstuck, albeit Sykes just not able to stay alongside enough in the end. And as they make their way through the right-hander, it is the case that McGregor finally finds his way up into P5. But meanwhile, on that question of what happened to Nigel Stock, it is the case we can now take a look back and find out. This was on the opening lap of the race, and we're focusing on the number 30 driver here as he made his way down into Moss Corner. Oh, goodness me, in contact there with what was, I believe, Thomas Delaney, giving him a tap on the rear end, and the Crest Autosport with Pebbles driver forced around, and that has dropped him all the way down the order. Well, that is very unfortunate for Nigel Stock, and not a happy start to his racing here at the Motorsport Circuit. But as he's down in P17, it is the case that he'll be looking to try and make a recovery drive in the next race. There's no doubt about that. But meanwhile, the driver involved in that contact, the SVPMR driver with Ignium Tom Delaney, right now chasing after Ben Bennyworth and trying to find his way on through. And in fact, they have swapped places here. It is the case that Ben Bennyworth has found his way on through, and as they make the way on down, let's find out exactly how the move was made. This was in the run through turn number 2, and I think Delaney just went a little bit deep and locked the brakes up there through 2, and then Bennyworth was made to go all the way around the outside and got the move done as they headed into turn number 3. A classic move there from Bennyworth to go round the outside when he's got the momentum and gets it done. As we return to live pictures now, we are hearing that Nigel Stock has been involved in another major moment. Nigel Stock definitely having a sad day here in race number 1. We've still got plenty more races to go, and it is the case he's building up that momentum. But as we look from him to a bit further up the field, we look to Michael Crees, and as we cut to him, bit of contact there with what was, I believe that's John Higgins Jr. The two of them really getting the elbows out here. Well, my goodness, now that, I think there's a bit more context behind that than simply the tap, but we can see that Paul Scott looking up the inside of the pair of them, getting the run into turn 1, but there's contact there, and Crees tries to come through with him, and well, Paul Scott and Crees coming together. Well, it's the case Paul Scott, I think, will feel very shaken and quite stirred to perhaps protest that one post-race, but it is the case as he makes his way down towards turn 2 and up towards 3. We can see now Bennyworth coming through, and Delaney also trying to get into the mix as they make the way into turn number 3. Well, Bennyworth trying to go round the outside. Now, this is very daring from Bennyworth. He's done it once on Delaney, but of course at that time Delaney didn't have the pace, but this time Paul Scott has the pace, and Bennyworth has to back out as they make the way down the hill towards turn number 5. But you can see that Crees unsettled under braking in the kink of 4, just taking a bit too much of the apex curve at turn 4, the apex grass we should really say, and that causing the car to just slightly slide on out. But Crees under major pressure as we ride on board here and look back from the car of the Next Gen Racing blue driver Michael Crees, and Paul Scott inching closer. And as they charge their way down towards what is turn number 8 at this point. It is the case that neither driver right now really giving in. You can see that Bennyworth also trying to get into the mix, but Paul Scott going defensive in the middle and slightly off centre to the inside. And as they roll the way into the S, there's no change right now, but Crees definitely feeling that pressure. And then we've got Tom Delaney who's caught up behind. We see Ben Bennyworth there trying to take a little bit of a sneak to the inside, trying to throw the dummy move up the inside into turn number 9. But if anything, that's only costing pace as Delaney takes a bit too much apex curve at 10. It unsettles the car and launches it. Meanwhile, Arrowsmith here under pressure from his teammate. Oh goodness me, I'm already getting flashbacks to Alan Menu and Jason Plato, if I remember correctly, years ago back in the 90s, where the two teammates running at Renault in those livery cars, or very close livery cars, they came together, and that's what you don't want to do, is have contact with your teammate. And the two of them are battling here. They're being allowed to battle, and as they make the way out of turn number 2 and up towards 3, you can see that Arrowsmith going defensive here versus what is Whitehouse as they head through the right-hander. And as they come charged on through, it is the case that you can see how right now Whitehouse feels. So I think he's got the greater momentum here in this battle for P15, but at every time it seems that Arrowsmith just finds a way to defend it for the time being. But still, we're not even halfway into this race. Would you believe it? It feels as though the race has gone on for a long time with all the action we've had. But it is the case, no, we're just reaching the 10-minute mark, and now David Whitehouse here looking to have the run. The JBW Racing driver just not able to find his way on through. But meanwhile, speaking of trying to find his way on through, we see Michael Crees here once again having to battle with Paul Scott. In fact, Paul Scott has found his way past, and you can see it there is the case. Bennyworth trying to go round the outside, but losing the momentum then. Crees takes a look to the outside instead as they roll the way into the S's, and Paul Scott goes a little bit deep, but no change between them for now. They stay as they were, but meanwhile we look from them to a bit further up the order indeed here to what is Matt Emmons, who finds himself hunting after John Higgins Jr. in the battle for P7 with Mark Sykes at the head of this trio. And as they make their way through the right-hander of what is turn number 1, we look back to a move that was made only moments ago by John Higgins Jr. on Matt Emmons for that P8. This was in the charge down towards what was turn number 8 in towards the S's, and Evans defending to the inside here. I think under braking, you're going to see that Higgins just simply carrying more speed, and with that opened up corner on the outside line, able to bravely go around outside to inside and get it done nice and smoothly there, Higgins Jr. And meanwhile, we see Evans, as soon as we cut back, Evans now getting ahead of Higgins Jr. as they make the way down towards what is turn number 5. And well, it is the case the two drivers have switched positions back, and meanwhile a bit further back we can see that Paul Scott here now finds himself stuck behind what is John Higgins Senior. And well, it is the case that Senior's had a bad lap previously and has been reeled on in. In fact, it is the case he's fallen back to this battle, and as they make the way down the back straight here, well, Bennyworth's going to take another look on Michael Crees. And well, can Bennyworth this time drag his way on past? Crees does have the double toe, of course, of what is Scott and Higgins Senior, and it is the case I think he will have to wait his turn as we got Paul Scott looking to go up the inside here into turn number 8. He goes for it, and as they make the way on through, Higgins Senior is not going to give up. He's going to go outside to inside on the defense, and as he does here, he keeps Paul Scott at bay for the time being as they roll their way through the right-hander. And as they do, a nice defense there from Higgins Senior, but you can imagine it won't be long before Paul Scott finds a way on through as they make the way down to turn number 1. Well, it is the case there that Higgins Senior right now still with Paul Scott on his inside, making it as difficult as possible, but fairly. And Paul Scott trying once again to sneak up the inside into turn number 2, but he overcooks it slightly. Michael Crees now comes on through here in this battle for P10. He's up into P11, but Paul Scott there on the inside has to go defensive versus Bennyworth. And Crees really trying to find a way into that top 10, and as they make the way out of turn number 3 and down towards 5, they charge. In this case now Bennyworth side by side with Paul Scott here in this brilliant battle between the 4 drivers to that P10 position. And oh goodness me, Bennyworth there losing the rear of the car coming down the hill, and the car has completely snapped away, but he's brought it back together. And well, Crees is off as well. It's all drama here at Moss Corner, and what exactly has happened as Crees returns to the circuit, it's anybody's guess, but thankfully we do have the ability to take a look back via a replay, and let's find out. Was the case only moments ago, and as we look here, well, Crees up the inside into the corner, and I think in the end carrying a bit too much speed into the corner. And in fact, we do take a look back at exactly what happened from Crees' perspective, and then coming down, it was a run up the inside and a tap, and in the end taking Higgins Senior off with him. And well, I think Crees there just getting a little bit too adventurous on the brakes, and in the end losing more places than he was able to gain. But as we do return to the live pictures here, we can see now Creed's down to P16 behind Mark Arrowsmith. But as they make the way on through, it's a case of looking for the move here for P15 already. Arrowsmith on that outside, not able to defend. And, well, Creed gets there for now. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them. And, well, Arrowsmith, I don't think will be too pleased with that as he drops to P16. But as we look from them to further up the order, we do look all the way up to our race leaders here. And in particular, Adam Delmont, who has crept closer. It is the case that Adam Delmont now up to what is the rear of the top two and trying to bring Jamie Dorey with him. And as they make the way down the back straight here, it is the case that Adam Delmont right in the toe of the Verano Motorsport drivers at this point and looking quite adventurous as they head on up towards what is turn number 8. And as they come charging on down the back straight, I can tell you that Rob McGregor has also moved up into P5. He's got ahead of Matthew Addy, so it is now the case that McGregor is in the last of the top 5 positions. But Delmont definitely coming on strong here and looking for that potential move versus what is Gavin Gardner very soon, as Gardner here trying to make it a Verano Motorsport 1-2, but he's still got 5.5 minutes to go, and that is a very long time here given the number of laps. And of course the Honda Civic Type R, whilst it's not the fastest on single lap pace, its advantage, which we've seen time and time again, is its ability to survive the gradual fall off of the car, particularly on the tyres over the race distance, where it is the case the Elantras in particular have significant degradation in terms of pace by the time they get to the 14th and 15th minute. It is the case the Audi and the Hyundai Veloster meanwhile have quite a significant degradation towards the last couple of minutes, but we're seeing the Honda by comparison just does not feel that drop off as much. And now Gardner definitely feeding that pressure of Delmont behind. But speaking of pressure being put on a driver, it is the case that Matt Emmons here trying to put pressure on what is John Higgins Jr. as they make their way through the right-hander of what is turn number 3 and start to make their way down towards turns 4 and 5. And as they do, Evans here gets in a good run, but he has to back out. There is the case that 2 do not go into 1 in the run to 4 unless you're both willing to back out and fully alongside one another, and Evans has to wait his turn once again. But meanwhile, we look to Rob McGregor here, who earlier on, about 3 laps ago, found his way past Matthew Addy. We haven't quite seen that, it's been off camera, but you can see whilst we've been in the rear of the picture, we do have Evans battling with Higgins Jr. for position. It is the case on the centre of our screens right now. It's McGregor who has to go defensive for P5 versus the P6 driver here of Matthew Addy, and these two of course battling for P2 in the Prime class here with Gavin Gardner the Prime leader. And with now 4 minutes to go plus that final lap, it is the case that McGregor really having to pull out all the stops if he wants to hold on to the position as they make their way through the right-hander here of turn number 10. But then we do have Ben Bennyworth battling with what is Higgins Senior as they head on through, and Higgins Senior holding on for the time being to that P11 position as they roll the way on through. It turns 9 and 10, but you can see that Higgins having to park the car in apex at 10, but Bennyworth simply getting the run, foot to the floor and up the inside into turn number 1, but not close enough to make the move occur. And as they make their way out of the corner, Higgins stays ahead for the time being. As further back we see Whitehouse here trying to put the pressure on Delaney as they make their way into turn number 2, but Higgins Senior once again having to go defensive here for P11 as they come through to turn number 2. And as they head up towards turn number 3, we cut from them to what is Jamie Dorey. Now, where on earth is Adam Delmont? Oh, goodness me, and Adam Delmont with an off there at Moss Corner. What happened to Adam Delmont? Making his way down the hill, it looks like he's already made a mistake at some point on the lap, given the fact that he's dropped away from the top 2 and then just simply getting it wrong. And it looks as though they're locking up into what was Moss Corner of circuit, and he's lost out massively. But as we do look back to Adam Delmont here, it is the case, as you say there, Sean, Granny Swatch in the YouTube chat, losing 1 second to the front two on the last lap. I think Delmont's been pushing too hard and it's come back to haunt him. And well, it is the case, he's running in P4 now, P3 in the Pro class, but he'll just settle for that P4 for the time being as we look from him to Ben Bennyworth here, who continues this rivalry for P11, was effectively P6 in the Prime class between himself and John Higgins Senior, and the two of them going side by side through turn number 8. As they head up into turn 9, Bennyworth this time getting the better run, and in fact Higgins Senior out breaking himself into turn number 9, and it is the case of picking up a lot of understeer, and Bennyworth finally makes the move stick, and he's had to work for it, but well done to him. Now Higgins Senior has the pressure of Delaney and what is Whitehouse behind as they roll the way down through turn number 1. 2 minutes still left on the clock as they come charging up towards turn number 2, and we ride on board here with David Whitehouse, who is trying to find his way to gain at least one more place on Delaney. I think he feels as though he's got the pace, as we're hearing that Aaron Smith is in the pit lane, and of course John Burnham in the pit lane as well. And well, it is the case they've done enough enough laps, I think, to be classified as finishing, and well, they'll be eligible for that grid for race number 2, of course. What the fact is a finishing position grid from race number 1, but difficult day for Aerosmith and Burnham, as meanwhile Whitehouse here, who we ride on board with still, heading down towards turn number 5, up towards Moss Corner they go, looking to gain those last couple of places. He makes his way into the hairpin, but no way through into the face where Honda Civic confronts him, but he now tries to get the better run in the charge up towards the S's. As he heads his way on down here, we do look to the blimp camera, albeit the blimp camera being obscured a little bit by the woodland, but as they make the way up, we will very soon see them start to appear heading into the corner of what is the S's here, and a wonderful Canadian countryside as they head up towards turn number 8, and as they charge on through all line astern at this point, and the number 7 driver here really trying to put that pressure on. As you see in front, it is the case that Higgins Senior really struggling by comparison in these braking zones and these medium speed apexes, and as we look a little bit closer to circuit side, it is the case that Higgins Senior trying to hold on for one more lap. We do believe that the white flag is out now, and it is the case we've got one more lap of racing to go as we see our drivers make the way into turn number 1. But as they do, we look to our leader here, Chris Daines, and absolutely running this one from start to finish with his teammate Gavin Gardner as well. The two of them having a brilliant start, getting the jump at the start, and they have been almost untouchable, albeit Adam Delmont was very close at one point but lost out towards the end, made a mistake at Moss Corner, and now it is the case that these two running off into the distance. But as we briefly look from them to Whitehouse here, Whitehouse looking for the move, coming out to turn 3, down towards where it's turns 4 and 5. He's going to try and go all the way around the outside on Delaney here. He's been looking for this all while, and Delaney takes the grass, and Whitehouse gets it done for P13. He hooks up on the braking there, and he's up to P13 in the end. But meanwhile, we cut from them to our race leader, who as he makes his way through the penultimate corner, it has been a dominant drive from Verano Motorsport, and it will be Chris Daines in the Pro class who takes the win here at Mosport as they cross the line together in formation. Here's your winner overall in the Pro class, and alongside him is Gavin Gardner, who continues where he left off from a Brands Hatch by taking second place overall and the win in the Pro class. It's a Verano Motorsport 1-2 with Jamie Dorey completing the overall podium for Next Gen Racing Orange in P3, Adam Delmont in P4, and then Rob McGregor in holding off Matthew Addy to complete the top 5 with Matthew Addy P6. And then Mark Sykes P7, and a deserved P7 in the end with John Higgins Jr. P8. Then it is Matt Evans in P9, followed by Paul Scott to complete the top 10, keeping Ben Bennyworth at bay, but brilliant battling for that P10 position, no doubt. David Whitehouse P12, Tom Delaney P13, and then we have John Higgins Senior P14, followed by Michael Crees at P15, and then Nigel Stott, the last of our finishers here, staying in it to the very end despite the damage on that Honda Civic. The Crest Autosport with Pebbles car comes limping across the line P16 ahead of Mark Aerosmith and John Burnham, who both had to retire due to issues or damage with the car. And we did have confirmation there in the YouTube chat from John Burnham to say, I have too much damage to continue. But indeed, a brilliant opening race here today at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and we've still got 2 more races to go. And as our drivers make their way to the pit lane, it is the case Verano Motorsport really showing their form here. But let's take a look at those race results, subject to stewards' inquiries, of course. Well, it is the case that after our first race here in round 3 of the NXTCC, as brought to you on iRacing 2022, Chris Daines taking that win in the end by 0.2 of a second over Gavin Gardner, taking the win in the Pro class, whereas Gavin Gardner in the end taking that second place and the win in the Pro class. Jamie Dorey P3 to complete the overall podium, second place in the Pros, and Adam Delmont just missing out on the overall podium after that mistake right towards the end, but still that P4 means that he is finished 3rd in the Pro class and completes the Pro podium. Rob McGregor completes the overall top 5, and he is followed up by Matthew Addy P6 and McGregor and Matthew Addy P2, P3 respectively. Within the Prime class, they complete the Prime podium, with then Mark Sykes P7, John Higgins Jr. P8, fighting for that P8 from start to finish, Matt Evans P9, and Paul Scott completing the top 10, and then Ben Bennyworth in P11 ahead of David Whitehouse. David Whitehouse fighting from the back of the grid to P12. Credit to him, brilliant driving for him and gaining multiple places. Thomas Delaney P13, John Higgins Senior P14, falling off towards the end there. The HSR Lancia just not able to hold on in his hands. And then Michael Crees P15, after a flying start, falling down the order and a few elbows coming out in between. Nigel Stott P16, Mark Aerosmith P17, John Burnham P18, and I believe that is all of our order. And it is the case, of course, Lee Horn not being classified for this one as he was not able to make it to the grid, but we do hope to see him return to the grid for race number 2, where he'll start from the back. But my goodness, what a brilliant opening race. And we still got 2 more to go, ladies and gentlemen. Plenty of racing still to come. And we will be back in approximately 5 minutes or so time. In fact, about 7 minutes from now, we will be back for the build-up to race number 2. Another 20-minute race, a sprint race where the grid will be set based on the finishing positions of race number 1. And Canadian Motorsport make it 2 out of 2 in terms of a 1-2 finish. We'll come back soon and we'll see what the story beholds. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the build-up to race number 2 here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, our Canadian Thruxton, if you will, and what a fantastic race number 1 it was. We're battling up and down the order, through and through, and as our drivers get ready to go once again, it will be the case that sprint race number 2 lies ahead in approximately what is 5 minutes' time. We'll be heading to the grid, so about just on schedule, and well, as we get ready to go racing in round number 3 of the NXTCC once more, we should just briefly take a moment to point out to you that if you didn't know, it is the case that recently NXTGEN Racing has refurbished its website, and it is the case that, as you can see here, we have an all-new website, fully interactive website. It is the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, and if you want to find out about all of our sim racing events, championships and community events that we run and organise year in, year out, and also just a little bit about the individuals behind the story at NXTGEN Racing, then do head to our official website and you can find out all the details there. And whether you're looking to sign up, alternatively just ask questions or find out more, all the links and information are readily available to you. And well, it is a fantastic website and definitely something that we're very proud to be able to present as of today. But as we look from our website back to the circuit, it is the case we do see our drivers making their way on around still, and that website of course nextgenracing.co.uk, and it is the case we'll have that link on screen much later for you. But as we do wait for our drivers to head to the grid, with only 4 minutes between now and when we go racing once again, it is the case that some drivers had a fantastic race, others had a very difficult race by comparison, and well, John Burnham was right in the thick of it early on in the race, but in the end had to retire the car due to issues, and they've had to do a lot of work on that Audi RS3. And they have to do a bit of work on it there, given the fact he's had that whack to the wall, just a bit unsettled. But here's the case, the Audi, a very tricky car to essentially get up to pace and temperature. The fact the tyres take quite a bit of time, it's not a car that can come straight out of the box full pelt, as we see Chris Danes there off track with Adam Delmont and Jamie Dorey all coming together, as we've still got our drivers making their way back into the pit lane and getting ready to go racing. But indeed, race number 1 was definitely the story of Verano Motorsport, and then Jamie Dorey and Adam Delmont picking up the pieces, P3, P4. Can they now spring a surprise, much like Verano Motorsport did at the start of race number 1? Can they jump into the lead or get themselves between the two Verano Motorsport drivers and potentially cause an upset? We'll have to wait and find out. But in terms of drivers who did not have a good race number 1, where it's the case Lee Horn didn't have a race number 1 at all. It was the case he was in the pit lane with technical issues that were being resolved. But I'm very pleased to announce, as you can see him here, making his way on round in the very shiny and very colourful NXTGEN Racing at Green Honda Civic Type R. It is the case that Lee Horn is back, and our pro driver is on the charge and ready to go racing once again as he heads down the back straight here. Get a little bit of lap time in order to be able to get himself warmed up. Of course, he's been itching to go, but now he won't be in the chat anymore. He'll be out on the circuit, charging it around and trying to make amends. Of course, he'll be starting from towards the back of the grid, if not the very back of the grid, given he did not finish race number 1. He didn't even take to the grid for it, so he'll be classified as the very last driver. But as he makes his way through, just a reminder, it is the case that this broadcast today being brought to you on all the NXTGEN Racing official media platforms. That's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube.com. Alternatively, if you are on Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. Or if you're more of a Twitch.tv user, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141, where you'll be able to tune in on my personal broadcasting channel. But it is the case, of course, it's about NXTGEN Racing here today, and it is the NXTGEN Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022. And as our drivers continue here to get themselves set, it is the case that Lee Horn will be one to watch out for, and remembering that the grid is set based on the finishing positions of race number 1, so Burnham will be starting from towards the back of the grid. In fact, he may be sharing a row with Lee Horn, if my memory serves me correctly, but at the same time, race number 1 is done and dusted. Our drivers have to put it behind them and think about what they can do in race number 2. And well, one driver who I think will really be thinking about what he can do is Adam Delmont. He'll be starting from P4. What can he do for that second run? Can he get the launch he needs in order to be able to potentially pick up a win? He'd love to see himself on the top step. Indeed, we'd love to see him up on that top step. But there's so many drivers here really gunning for wins, indeed gunning for podiums. You could argue we'd love to see every single one of them up there. But at the end of the day, there can only be 3 drivers on a respective podium. And in this case, we can only have 1 winner in each of the classes when they get to the checkered flag. And as Delmont here makes his way down that back straight, it is the case that we did see, when we did talk about earlier on, the Audi did seem to be the strongest of the cars here at the motorsport circuit, and that has come to life. But the Honda has been going very well, to be fair, particularly if it's in a draft. It seems to use that draft very well to mitigate its straight line speed disadvantage, and absolutely flies as the race goes on deeper and deeper. And that is something which I think everybody has perhaps been caught out a little bit by, other than our Honda drivers, and I think our Elantra drivers really suffering here, and Will Higgins Senior in particular for HSR really having a difficult race number one, falling down the order as the race went on. The car just not with him. Can he have a better race at number two? That will be the question on his mind as he makes his way through Moss Hairpin and now gets ready to make his way to the grid as the checker flag is out on this final warm-up session for race number two. And now any moment all drivers will be made to go back to the paddock, and then they'll head out onto the grid and start lining up. And well, here we go then as we make our way to the race two grid. So as we take a look for our grid for race number two, then here is how they will stand on that grid. It is the case we will see Chris Daines and Gavin Garner, the Verona Motorsport drivers, one of them the Pro, the other the Pro-Am. They will line up on that front row, looking to make it another Verona Motorsport 1-2. Jamie Dorey and Adam Delmont, the two Pro drivers from Next Gen Racing Orange, line up behind them. And then we have Rob McGregor and Matthew Addy line up on row number 3. The two Pro-Ams are looking to deliver after what was a good race one for the pair of them. And then it will be Mark Sykes and John Higgins Jr. who make up row number 4. Matt Emmons and Paul Scott on row number 5, the Next Gen Green driver ahead of the Next Gen Racing Blue driver, with Ben Bennyworth and David Whitehouse going to be continuing the rivalry from row number 6 here in race number 2. And then we have Thomas Delaney and John Higgins Senior on row number 7. Two drivers who I think have got more to play for this time around. And then Michael Creed and Mark Harrismith on row 8, with John Burnham and Lee Horn on our final row, our 9th and final row of this grid. 18 drivers take to the grid. Who will come out on top? Let's find out, as it is the case. We're now waiting for the lights. And it's lights out, away we go for race number 2 here in round 3 of the NXTCC 2022 as Chris Daines and Gavin Garner get a good start. And we see further behind, there's already been a major incident much further back. Multiple drivers involved in that incident. We will cut that very shortly. But in the meantime, it does look as though here it is the case that John Burnham having a difficult start indeed. In fact, he's had a quite decent start as Burnham. In the fact he has gained a little bit since the start. And in fact, he's gained multiple places where we've got Paul Scott, we've got Thomas Delaney and also Michael Crease with the pit lane. We've got a car off there in the wall, and that is David Whitehouse, I think, who's in the wall. Oh, goodness me, Whitehouse into the wall. It is drama right at the start of this race. Well, it is the case. A lot of drivers who wanted to go racing, they have not gone racing the way they wanted, but John Higgins Senior has gained massively for all this, much like has John Burnham behind him. And as Senior here is battling with what is Bennyworth into the corner. He's going to go round the outside into Boss Corner and gain another place here early on. But my goodness, it is drama on lap number 1 of race number 2. And as they make the way on out of Boss Hairpin and down towards the S's, it is the case we do look further afield, up the field we should say, and Jamie Dorey in that P3 ahead of Adam Delmont still, but the Honda drivers have once again been thwarted by the Audis off the line. But now it's the case, can the Audi RS3s hold on for the opening couple of laps whilst they get up to temperature versus the Honda Civics that come charging out of the box? But as they make the way through the S's, it does look as though Dorey and Delmont are both still finding their feet. As we see there further back, it is the case of Matthew Addy having to go very, very defensive versus what is Rob McGregor on the exit of 9 into 10. And as they make the way across that timeline, let's take you through that top 10 as it stands after one lap. So after a single lap in race number 2, oh goodness me, it is the case we have a safety car for what's happened. So it is Chris Daines. In fact, we'll take you through that order very shortly. I think more importantly right now, we need to take you through what exactly happened at the race start, because we only saw it briefly on camera before we followed the leaders down towards turn number 1. And well, let's take a look at what happened from David Whitehouse's perspective. In fact, I think we're going to get it from what is Delaney's perspective first. But this was a race start. Now, this is from the SVPMR with Indian Motorsport drive. Oh, goodness me. And Paul Scott there involved in an incident. Delaney taking evasive action. Then he invited himself on the grass, and it did not work out for Delaney. Well, what exactly happened to Paul Scott? We look from the blimp camera here as they went to launch off the line, and well, can we see there was a car going very slow? That was Mark Sykes. Well, Mark Sykes literally had a box full of neutrals as he came out of the line, and well, Paul Scott there, we didn't see that too close. We tried to take a closer look at the camera here, and this is from a closer perspective. But watch Mark Sykes on the left there. He'll go very slowly in the Veloster, and then as everyone's trying to take evasive action, Paul Scott getting caught there slightly with what was the Audi, I think of, unless I'm mistaken. We'll try and cut back to that once more, but I think it was Ben Bennyworth who tried to launch, and in fact as Ben Bennyworth got underway, I think the two of them came together as Ben Bennyworth then tries to take the evasive action, much like the Next Gen driver in front, and indeed that's how it all happened. And then Michael Crees, who tried to get an absolute surge in start, he nailed this launch. It's the case it did not work out for Michael Crees, and as we take a look back at it from what is Crees' perspective, or here it is from his perspective, what exactly happened. He launched off the line, and well, he's going to think, right, I'm going to go between the space, a little bit of a tap there with a driver alongside, and then he finds a face for Paul Scott's wayward Audi there, and nowhere to go as everybody came together. A difficult start to the race for multiple drivers. Maybe as we return to the live pictures, the safety car still out there and still making its way on around at this point. Now that was the instant of the start line there, so Mark Sykes having a slow start, and then everybody having to navigate. Oh, excuse me, almost coughing there, having to navigate their way around Mark Sykes. It is the case that happens at the start with standard starts. But in the end, it was the case that as everyone tried to navigate their way around, not everyone made it safely on through. And well, that'll be one that the stewards will definitely have to pick apart. And I can imagine that'll be a difficult one for them to do. I'm grateful I'm not in the stewarding booth, I'm in the commentating booth. But it is the case that we now look to what happened to David Whitehouse in the opening lap, who had a major crash with the water turn number 2. In fact, I think Whitehouse was involved in it from the very start. A slow start for David Whitehouse, in fact. And as he made his way on through, he slammed on the brakes there to avoid the wayward cars. A bit of a tap there with his teammate, Aerosmith, who managed to sneak up the inside there. And as Whitehouse then got himself back up to speed, where it was the case there, a little bit of a knock that would have damaged the car slightly. But as he came on through turn number 1, absolutely fine. Heading up into turn number 2, I suspect we're going to hear something about cold tyres here as he rolls his way down the hill. Indeed, understeer there with cold tyres. And, well, it's the case once the car's gone into the wall, and a difficult moment there for Whitehouse as we do return to the live pictures here. And, well, the safety car right now making its way out of Moss Corner, but a very tricky start to this race. And we have lost the opening 5 minutes as a result, and we'll have the rolling restart very soon. I suspect the safety car will be in at the end of this lap, because you can see how it is the case that we've only got right now one driver who is making the way on around and trying to catch up with the field, and that is Michael Crees. He's heading through turn number 1 and up towards 2. We may have one more lap behind the safety car to enable Crees to catch up to the field, but we do have the majority now together. Everybody weaving side by side to get some temperature into those tyres, and well, you can imagine right now both Danes and Gardner will be hoping that as much time as possible could be taken out of the race, or will they actually? You're thinking about it, no, they probably won't be, because of the fact that they will want to be out of the safety car pace as soon as possible, because that Audi right now is going to be losing a lot of tyre temperature, and they need that tyre temperature as much as possible. But will the safety car come on in, or will it not? No, it stays out for one more lap. So it is the case that Crees right now tried to make his way up to the field. We suspect he will be there come the end of this lap. We'll be going racing at the end of this one, because it is the case that all of our drivers are raring to go. As we look a bit further back here, one of our biggest gainers at the start, albeit slightly at the expense of what is his teammate in terms of delivery, but in fact they're not teammates, Aerosmith and Whitehouse. They're racing for different teams here, and that's a mistake I was correct from earlier, but Aerosmith really gaining 6 places since the start, and Lee Horn as well gaining 7 off the line. It is against the Next Gen Racing green driver having a solid start at gaining plenty of places, but now as he makes his way down towards turn number 3, we think to himself, right, I've got myself up into the midfield, now I've got to really put the pressure on as we go into really what will be about a 12-minute race by the time we do go racing. And well, for Lee Horn, it's going to be one of those situations whereby I think he'll just want to try and settle into the rhythm here in terms of this race number 2 and try and finish inside what will be about the top 10 to give himself a good chance of a potential reverse grid pole, or at least been included in that reverse grid, which will put him right up towards the front. Of course, it is the case of that reverse grid. We do have an equal number of those position numbers in the raffle pot. It's not the case as a particular bias, so our drivers can't hope that they're going to end up being on that bias number. It is the case they would ideally they need to target finishing in what is P6 to be guaranteed to be in that reverse grid. But of course, if you end up being in P10 and that's the number that's called, then you'll be starting on poles. It's risk versus reward, and it is a gamble. But speaking of gambles, it is the case here. Will they gamble on going very fast at the start in terms of trying to break away in the form of Danes and Garner, or will they take it easy and ease themselves into the racing? We'll have to wait and see, but the field is definitely now bunching up. The safety car has released the field. It is the case that the safety car has been released from the field, and Chris Danes will get us back underway very shortly. And here we go once again as Danes decides to shoot and go, coming into turn number 10, and as he does, the field charges up for across the timing line with 12 minutes to go, plus also the final lap, and as they make the way down into turn number 1, which it is the case, no change in terms of our top 5 drivers, but a bit further back, Ben Bennyworth already on the charge here and dropping John Burnham in the run to turn number 1 as they make the way into 2, and a bit further back we can see how Aerosmith here really going on the offensive versus John Burnham. Burnham having a slow start and Aerosmith absolutely flying off the restart line, and as they make the way up towards turn number 3, he's going to look up the inside here for what is P10, and can he get it done? As we've got a bit of smoke there, and that is, I believe that was brake dust from what was a driver, and in particular is Rob McGregor, who rejoins. He rejoins in the middle of the road there, albeit brings the car into the middle of the road to line up the line for turn number 4, and Aerosmith finds his way through, as does Lee Horner. We can see Matt Emsel's to try to get on in. Oh goodness me, it's 3 wide almost under braking into Moss corner, and the 3 drivers coming together there, and John Burnham now tucked on the inside, but John Burnham definitely pushing on strong. It's about high. That is Tom Delaney and Paul Scott in the wars, and Paul Scott with a shunt to the wall. The tyres off. That is going to be a tow to the pit lane. That's very unfortunate for Paul Scott and Delaney. Well, he was caught up with that. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but meanwhile, we must look at our leaders here, because it is the case. Our top 3 really coming together now after 1 lap of the restart, and as they make the way towards the end of said lap, Chris Danes leads, but Jamie Dorey all over the back of him as they head onto another lap, and we ride on board here with Jamie Dorey, who gets a good run out the final corner. He's trying to make a move up the inside here into turn number 1. Does he dare to dive to the inside? No, he's made to wait here, and as they roll the way through turn number 1, it is the case he'll be trying to size up the move, I suspect, in the run up towards turn number 5. We're taking a bit too much curbing there on the exit, unsettling the car and costing a bit of rhythm into turn number 2. But again, Gavin Gardner showing a great resilience here, not feeling that pressure from Dorey, not showing signs of feeling it if he is, as the top 3 here roll the way into turn number 3, and as they do, the Next Gen Racing Orange driver will want to get past Gardner, and they go hunting after the leader of the Pro Class, which is Chris Danes, your overall leader, as they head down towards turn number 5. As they make the way down the hill, Jamie Dorey having to wait, having to bide his time once again as they head into the heavy braking zone here. No way through at the moment. You can see how able to go later on the brakes and carry more speed under braking compared to the Audi in the Honda. But then again, he finds a face full of Audi and no way through, or no way to tuck it up the inside. As we look back to the exterior cameras, and Adam Delmont also in the mix there. Meanwhile, Matthew Addy then in the next pack, running in P5, leading the second pack of drivers down the back straight right now, breaking away from John Higgins Jr. at this time as they head up towards turn number 8 in towards the S's. But as they charge on down, we do very briefly take a look at what exactly happened between Paul Scott and Tom Delaney, and in fact we're about to find out. This was only moments ago, and there was a multi-car coming together in front, and then, well, Delaney just up the inside there and hooked on what was the rear right quarter panel of Paul Scott's car, and Paul Scott in the end being sent to the wall and the tyre coming on off. That was very unfortunate. I think an incident that wasn't planned by anyone, but Delaney and Paul Scott both in the pit lane with repair work to their cars, and that may be their race is over, it must be said. But meanwhile, Lee Horn here, as we return to live pictures, has found his way past Mark Aerosmith for P9. We will take a look back at how that was done very shortly, but gaining places is Lee Horney is continuing to take names and take numbers. So we see a bit of rallycross there for Rob McGregor, and well, earlier on it was the case that Rob McGregor had a bit of an offer to drop down the order to a degree, and he's had another off now, has the Scott in the HSR machine, and it is the case it's not looking comfortable in the Hyundai Elantra for Rob McGregor right now as he makes his way through 4 and up towards turn number 5. As he comes charging up towards the hairpin at this point, it is the case that we hear that Nigel Stock was not able to make it to the start of this race, so it is the case he's in the pit lane right now. But meanwhile, Aerosmith there will poor run into the, coming out of the hairpin, and McGregor's going to have the charge down towards the S's here, and you can see already it is the case that Aerosmith tucks it behind, as meanwhile it's Emmons on the right, Sykes on the left. Now the camera pans round, they switch places. It is the case that Emmons trying to go round the outside into the S's for P12 versus Sykes. Can he get it done versus the Veloster driver? No, he can't at the moment, but he'll try and look for the run up towards turn number 9 and 10. And as they make the way through the left-hander here, it does look as though Emmons is putting the pressure on, but Sykes is proving resistant to it as they make the way on to another lap. And as they roll the way out to the right-hander, we we do look from them to our top four once again, and Jamie Dorey in particular here, it is the case, find himself sandwiched between his teammate and the second of the two Verano Motorsport cars, and Gavin Gardner right now feeling the pressure from the Next Gen Racing orange drivers, but again holding them at bay as we ride on board here, looking back from the gearbox of the Verano Motorsport machine. As he makes his way out, you can see here Dorey and Delmont battling side by side as they head down towards turn number 4, and Dorey having to defend the inside here into turn 4. This will cost both of them some time, in fact, because Dorey will have to slightly lift to bring the car through the corner, and as they made it one through, you can see how the gap has opened up very slightly. Oh, goodness me, and well, Gavin Gardner now takes the lead of this race, and Chris Daines has made a rare mistake. What's happened to Chris Daines we'll find out very shortly, but right now it is the case, up into the battle, or down into the battle we should say, with Adam Delmont. The two of them make their way side by side in this battle for P3 overall, P2 in the Pro class, and Chris Daines able to out-drag the Honda despite not having as much draft compared to what Delmont's getting. But as they make their way into turn 8, Delmont going late on the brakes here, which he can in the Honda. The two drivers are literally almost rubbing doors, but keeping enough space between them, almost a hair's width. And as they make their way through 9 and up into 10, Daines holding on to take back that P3 outside to inside to outside as he makes his way out to the final corner. But we take a look at exactly what happened to Chris Daines only moments ago. Was he's making his way down to Moss Corner in the lead. I think he's just carried too much speed into the corner. Indeed he has. Went out onto what is the dust there and was brought it back onto the circuit. It is the case that Daines was able to avoid a whack to the wall, which could have been absolutely hazardous to his race health. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 3 at this point, now putting the pressure on Jamie Dorey is the Danishman, and trying to go for that P2 to try and get it back to a Verano Motorsport 1-2, but Dorey will not let him through unless Daines finds a way clinically alongside. You can be certain of that, given the fact that Dorey and Daines, both of them very hard but fair drivers, and as they make their way through the right hander of Moss Corner this time around, we can see that lock up from Adam Delmont as well. Delmont trying to get into this mix. They do not want to let Daines get through, because if he does, I think they worry that he will be unassailable come the end of this race, with now only 5.5 minutes remaining. But as they come charging down the back straight here, it is the case we look from them to what is Johnny Higgins Sr. here, who finds himself being hotly pursued by Ben Bennyworth and Lee Horn. And Lee Horn on the charge here in P9. He found his way past Rob McGregor earlier on, and now he's trying to find his way past what is Ben Bennyworth, the pro driver here. And as they make their way into turn number 8 this time, no way through at the moment, having to bide his time and wait his turn, as we do see Ben Bennyworth meanwhile a little bit out of sorts. They're coming through turn number 9, and as he makes his way into 10, still 5 minutes to go. But meanwhile Chris Daines up the inside here into turn 1 versus Jamie Dorey, and as he goes up the inside, well, Dorey I think tuck it back in. I'm thinking there's still 5 minutes plus the final lap included in order to come on back here, and Dorey's going to run it close, and perhaps they're hoping they can be dragged up to the back of Gavin Gardner, given the fact that Gardner is 1.3 seconds up the road and has some breathing room to play with. But you can imagine here, I think Chris Daines would rather take the role of being the rear gunner at this point and give Gardner the opportunity to try and pull off into the distance as they make the way on through. But as they do, we look to Lee Horn battling still with Ben Bennyworth for P8. Lee Horn on the left of your picture, Bennyworth on the right in the Audi, and as the Honda driver tries to go round the outside into turn 4, he has to back out there and tuck back in. There's no way through as they make the way into Moss Corner here once more. But as they roll the way on through, Rob McGregor goes a little bit deep, but just about keeps it on circuit, keeps 2 wheels on track. So as a result, does not feel as compromised there in terms of his exit speed. And as he makes his way down the back straight, definitely driving on the limit right now is Rob McGregor. I think he feels as though he's got to try and get that pace. But as we look from him to Lee Horn and also Bennyworth and Higgins, or Higgins Senior in front, you can see the 3 drivers here battling for that P7, and Higgins Senior showing no signs of flinching. As we know, Ben Bennyworth finds himself boxed in with Lee Horn trying to crowd him to the inside, but in the end Bennyworth just able to stay ahead for the time being as they now head into turns 9 and 10. No change between the 3 of them as they roll on towards the end of another lap. They'll go on to lap number 11 shortly. Only 3 more laps to go, perhaps 2 depending on how soon our leaders clear the lap. But as we do look to Bennyworth here, looking up the inside, it's a bit of a move, but it's also a defence here. And Lee Horn this time is not going to yield. He's going to put it around the outside to inside here as they make the way into 2. And I think Bennyworth has put himself out of position, trying to do both a defence and offence at the same time. And Lee Horn up to P8 as Bennyworth now looks to strike back into turn 3, but as they make the way up into Quebec Corner, there's no way through for Bennyworth. But as they hold up position for the time being, we can see McGregor getting closer. But meanwhile, we look from them to our leaders. And as our leaders make their way down into turn number 5 here, you can see how Delmont all over the back of his teammate. And as we ride on board here with the Next Gen Racing orange driver, it is the case. I wonder if Delmont at this point might be thinking about trying to make the pass of his teammate towards the end of this race. Given the fact, of course, they're teammates, but at the end of the day, they've also got the Drivers' Championship in the Pro class. Every point matters to them. And whilst we're very early in the championship, every point could be pivotal towards the end. And you can see Delmont here tucked in right behind Dorey, but giving him a little bit of a bump draft along at the moment as he also looks to the inside there into the S's, thinking about it potentially, but no way this time. And as they make the way out of the right-hander into left-hander turn number 9, Delmont definitely showing a lot of pace here and trying to, well, yeah, I think he's trying to get Dorey to show that same pace, and if not, he'll have to go for the move. And in fact, a poor run out to turn 10 by Dorey means that Delmont's going to look up the inside, and as they make the way down into the drop for 1, it is the case. Delmont makes his way through. Now, does Dorey try to hold it around the outside to inside? He does go for the defense here on that outside to inside line, and Delmont will now have to look for a potential cutback run up towards Quebec corner at turn number 3. But you can see Dorey covers off his teammate there, and this is allowing the runner motorsport drivers to make it off into distance 1-2, as meanwhile it's the Next Gen Racing orange 3-4. And as they make their way out of turn number 3, there's not long left here. One more lap after this one. They're on the penultimate lap, and meanwhile we look from them, excuse me, to what is a bit further back very shortly, where Lee Horn is still battling with John Heaton Sr. and also Benny Worth and Rob McGregor. But as they make their way through turn number 5 here, no change for now between Adam Delmont and what is Jamie Dorey. But then we look here to this battle for P7, and John Heaton Sr. right now under huge pressure here as they make their way out of the corner and charge their way up towards the S's. And as they head down the back straight here, we ride on board with the number 60 driver looking back from the HSR car, John Heaton Sr. The Elantra initially putting away, but as that draft becomes more and more prominent, it is the case. We see the Honda Civic taking a look for the move, and it reveals that Benny Worth is under pressure here from what is behind McGregor, as McGregor gets his nose ahead. There's a tap between the two of them there, between Benny Worth and McGregor, and as it's hidden for us once again, it is the case that McGregor did find his way on through despite the tap, but he goes deep into turn number 9, and this is going to afford Benny Worth to run around the outside into 10, but McGregor defends it well here as they make the way down towards turn number 1, and as they do, it is the case that Lee Horn looking for the move, he can't quite find it, but these four stay as they are now as they head on to another lap, onto the final lap. And meanwhile, Jamie Dorey still battling with Adam Delmont for P3 here. And as they make their way out to turn number 3, it is the case. There's battles left, right and centre, and Higgins Senior still battling with Lee Horn as well. And in fact, Lee Horn now finds himself under pressure from where's McGregor behind, as McGregor's trying to go on the offensive. And I think the HSR drivers are trying to work together here to get Lee Horn to fall behind the pair of them as they make their way down towards turn number 5. And you see Lee Horn here scrambling to be in the draft of what is Higgins Senior, as McGregor trying to get into this battle and trying to get on through. And Benny Worth meanwhile having to play the patience game and stay behind as they make their way through the hairpin. Constantino together there, and now as they head down the back straight, where it's anyone's guess who will come out on top between these four as they head to the final 3 corners. They charge down the back straight, and it is John Heaton Senior who leads the group. He holds the inside here. He'll do everything he can to hold on to that P7 as they make the way on down, and he'll defend versus Lee Horn is going to go around the outside, but we must cut from them, ladies and gentlemen, because as they make the way through the final corner, it's going to be another Verano Motorsport 1-2, but this time it will be the Prime driver, Gavin Gardner, who takes the win from the United Kingdom, and in the Prime class ahead of Chris Daines, your Pro winner from Denmark, and then it will be Jamie Dorey who holds on ahead of his teammate Adam Delmont to come home P3 overall, Delmont P4, Matthew Addy P5, and then John Higgins Jr. P6. But what about Lee Horn? He held on in the end. He held on to take that. In fact, he found his way past what was Rob McGregor. I think there was a bit of an instant between the trio. We'll take a look at that very shortly. But Lee Horn P7, McGregor P8, John Higgins Senior P9, and Ben Bennyworth P10. And then Mark Harris with P11, followed by Matt Emmons P12, and then John Burnham P13, Mark Sykes P14, a difficult race for Mark Sykes, and David Whitehouse in the end, only able to recover to P15, but still bringing it all the way back. But with that in mind, we must take a look at what happened in that battle for P7 right at the end. And as we take a look back here in a very close battle all the way, Lee Horn on the right of the picture. Meanwhile, it was the case that Higgins on the inside, as they went their way through the corner, completely side by side into 8, and Lee Horn not yielding in the run to the inside of 9, and that's where it went wrong then for Higgins Senior. Just outbroke himself and understeered into turn number 9, and then McGregor went round the outside of his teammate in the drag race to the line, coming out to turn number 10. Well, close racing between those four, brilliant stuff all the way to the end. But as we return to the live pictures, it is the case. Let's take you through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after race number 2 here in round 3 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here today at the Motorsport Circuit, it is the case that Gavin Gardner there making it another overall win in his championship campaign, taking the win at 1.5 tenths clear of his teammate Chris Daines of Verano Motorsport 1-2, and Chris Daines taking the Pro Class win. Jamie Dorey completing the overall podium, and Adam Delmont in P4 completing the Pro podium, and then it's Matthew Addy P5 ahead of John Higgins Jr. and Lee Horn at P7, Ron McGregor P8 completing the Pro-Am podium, and then John Higgins Senior P9 holding off Ben Bennyworth to the line, Ben Bennyworth finishing P10. Mark Harris-Smith P11 ahead of Matt Emmons in P12, and then John Burnham P13 in a decent race, a recovery after a difficult start to his evening. Mark Sykes P14, David Whitehouse P15, and then Michael Crees, a very difficult race number 2, looking to bounce back in race number 3 with what was Tom Delaney P17 and Paul Scott P18, the two of them coming together, and then Nigel Stock unable to take to the grid, unclassified, and we started from the back for race number 3. But with those results in as they currently stand, it is the case now that we get ready for race number 3 coming up very shortly. But before we do, you know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the reverse grid draw. So it is the case here as we jump to the commentary box room, and I hope you're all doing well, ladies and gentlemen. We do have our raffle bowl here, of course, filled with the numbers 6 through 12 in equal assortment, and it is the case now we'll be doing that draw to see where the reverse grid will be taken from for our final race at Mosport. And if I close my eyes and shuffle the box, and it is the case, or shuffle the bowl I should say, as one of the sticky notes fell out there, it is the case as we shuffle, we now draw the number. And we do have a number, and what's it going to be? In fact, we have 2 numbers together, so I will take the top one of the 2. It is the case that we have, if I can get it to unstick itself. Well, it is the case. It's going to be right in the middle of the grouping. It is P9. 9th place is where we'll be taking the reverse grid for race number 3 from. Perhaps a surprise to some, perhaps unwelcome to others, but it is the case that P9 will see what will be John Higgins Sr. take pole position for race number 3, and he will be joined on that front row by what is Rob McGregor. So it is the case HSR will have a 1-2 starting position, but can they hold on to it until the very end? We'll have to wait and find out. But we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 5 to 10 minutes time for the build up to race number 3. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the build-up to race number 3 here in round 3 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, the NXTCC as it's abbreviated to, and well, with only one more 20-minute race on the cards tonight, it is the case that rather than the order being a pretty similar order compared to what we see in races 1 and 2, there is a top 9 reverse grid in play. And that reverse grid, of course, will mix things up significantly with the fact we take the grid from the top 9 and flip it upside down, but whoever finished in P10 and downwards stays where they are for the purposes of the grid of race number 3, and we'll have to see how it all plays out. And of course, our fast chargers, particularly our drivers from Verano Motorsport and Next Gen Racing Orange, Danes, Dorey, Gardner and Delmont will all now be looking to try and make their way through the order as quickly as possible and charge into the lead of the race and run away with the proceedings. But one of the key things here in race number 3, it would seem, is that the overall temperature of the circuit and ambient temperature has dropped significantly, and with that now, with a temperature of approximately 21 degrees centigrade ambient and 23 degrees track, it is the case the Hyundai Elantra drivers may just have a little bit more pace up their sleeve compared to how they were faring in races 1 and 2, particularly race number 1, where it seems as though very high temperatures seem to be hurting the Elantras very heavily compared to all of the other cars. But we will see what happens in practice, given the fact we've only got 2.5 minutes to go before we do get underway with the racing. And as we see Tom Delaney there taking a little bit too much runoff at turn number 5 and putting the car sideways, it's the case he won't want to be doing that in the race, because that mistake could cost him dearly. And indeed, he's got a lot to make up for in terms of points missed out from race number 2 after that incident involving himself and Paul Scott at that very corner, at Moss Corner, and he'll be looking to have a happy end to his night in the 555 car. But with only 2 minutes now on the board as the time continues to tick down, one thing we can definitely say is that over the course of the entirety of tonight, whether it's been in qualifying race 1 or race 2, there have been plenty of moments of battling and action, and indeed some very fast laps on the cards. But how will it all end? Of course, indeed, it was the case that race number 3 at Brands Hatch last time out, despite what was a rather limited reverse grid, it was the case that it delivered some fantastic racing, and there's no doubt we're going to see more of that here. But who will come out on top? Will it be Verano Motorsport who make it a 3-1-2 in succession, or will it be the case that we see a mix-up at the top of the step, or I should say a third 1-2 in succession, or will we see a mix-up? Could we potentially see Next Gen Racing Orange take a win here today at the Canadian Motorsport circuit, or is it the case that we'll be seeing a Verano Motorsport car up there, alternatively a completely different team? Could we suddenly see the rise of a Hyundai Elantra? And all eyes, of course, will be on the likes of Rob McGregor, who'll be starting right up towards the front, and Scott, who, because that reverse grid will be up there, can he convert what is a strong starting position into potentially a race win? We will find out very shortly. The thing that we're going for our drivers' minds at this point, in terms as they build up towards going to the grid for race number 3, is a bit of a reflection or a bit of self-introspection, if you will, on how the first 2 races have gone. And if you're somebody like, for example, John Burnham, you'll be thinking about after a difficult race number 1 and a fighting race number 2, that you've got to give it your all. And I can tell you one driver who'll be giving it his all once again. It'll be Michael Creed as he makes his way down the back straight here. It is the case, race 1 very fast off the line, but only to fall down the order as the race went on. Race number 2, a very difficult start, caught up to the back of the field to a degree under the safety car, but in the end wasn't quite there. But in race number 3 now, he'll be starting from towards the back as he drifts his way there into the S's, and can the Next Gen Racing blue driver find a way to get himself up into that top 10? I think that's what he craves, a top 10 finish here today, but will it come true, or will it be the case that he just misses out? Well, we're about to find out. And as we now transition over to the gridding process for race number 3, let's take you through that grid one more time. So it is the case that John Higgins Sr. lines up on pole position for HSR and is joined on that front row by Rob McGregor, who starts in at P2. Lee Horn will line up alongside John Higgins Jr. on the second row there, both of them starting high up the order, with Matthew Addy and Adam Delmont on row number 3. Jamie Dorey and Chris Daines, P7, P8, they make up row number 4, with Gavin Gardner there, our winner in race number 2, starting P9 on row number 5, joined by Ben Bennyworth, the prime stacking with solo racing driver. Mark Arrowsmith and Matt Evans on row number 6 are followed up by what is there, John Burnham and Mark Sykes on row 7, David Whitehouse and Michael Crees on row number 8, and then we have Tom Delaney and Paul Scott on row number 9, with Nigel Stock started at the back of the grid in P19, having missed race number 2. He's back for race number 3, and well, what could he pull off from that point of the grid? Let's wait and find out. As we now do look to the timing tower, it is the case we clear the grid out of the way and we wait for the lights. It's lights out and away we go one final time here at the Canadian Motorsport Circuit as they make their way down towards turn number 1, and as they do, John Higgins Sr. getting a good start, Lee Horn as well, but meanwhile McGregor under pressure already on the opening corner from what is Addy, as Addy tries to go toe-to-toe, and they both go off circuit there, and Matthew Addy with a brief grace to the wall. It's the case they rejoin, but as they do, you can see the mad scramble behind as off circuit. That is John Higgins Jr. who goes off, and oh goodness me, that's Jamie Dorey who's been turned, and meanwhile that's one of the Verano Motorsport cars. I think that's Chris Danes involved in a shunt with Dorey and also Matthew Addy. It is drama on the opening 2 corners, and it's only set to continue here as we see the lollygaggle cars charging out turn number 3 and down towards turn number 5. Now as they do, Gavin Gardner here, well, he's already gained 2 places since the start. He finds himself in the battle, or watching the battle here, of Mark Arrowsmith versus Adam Delmont and Dorey, as Arrowsmith gets on the apex curve there and hits Adam Delmont in the process, and Delmont brings him back together, and well, we see Gardner sneak out the inside. Oh goodness me, and Delaney into the wall there in contact with Matt Evans. The two of them coming together on the exit of Moss Corner. Moss Corner has not treated Thomas Delaney well at all today, and well, meanwhile Lee Horn battling with John Higgins Sr. as they make their way down the back straight for the first time of asking. Well, there was drama at the start of race number 2, but I don't think anybody could have predicted the drama here in race number 3, and the safety car has been deployed, but they race up to the start finish line. In fact, they race up to the, they do race up to the start finish line, and then they have to stop the racing from there, and it is John Higgins Sr. who holds on to the lead after the opening lap, as now the racing calms down, and indeed they make their way up behind the safety car which waits for them at the exit of turn number 1, and there is the safety car waiting for the field to catch it up. But my goodness, we're going to need some time to dissect exactly what's happened. But McGregor, Addy, Whitehouse and Crees all involved, and Paul Scott as well. 5 drivers involved in open lap instance. We've sort of jumped to the pits. We've also got Evans and Delaney into the pits as well for their contact. And let's take a look back and try to understand what happened from the very start. Well, it is the case as we wait for the replay footage to come on through. All the drivers at this point will be itching to go once again, but I think we will be delayed by about 4 to 5 minutes with everything that has happened. And as we take a look back to the race start, it is the case in particular, we do look back to the green flag, and well, as our drivers made their way away, it was the case of jump start there for Michael Crees, you could see, but as we ride on board with what was John Burnham, who had quite a slow start here, he's going to be towards the back of the field and come up into all the battling that occurred up ahead. Let's see his perspective as he rolled his way through turn number 1. Nothing so far, and then it all starts to kick off. You can see there, that was where I think Addy and also the HSR drive came together as Burnham makes his way on down. We do see that was Higgins Jr. going off, and then we saw what was the group, the trio if you will, and in fact also involved in that by looks things was Bennyworth. So here's the case, Bennyworth getting caught out there, but indeed absolutely eventful start as you say there, KT's in the Facebook chat. But let's take another look back here, and in particular this time we'll look from Matthew Addy's perspective as we focus the camera on him. He was right in the heart of that initial battle between himself and what was John Higgins Jr. as they made the way off the line, gained the jump down Higgins Jr. in fact, and as they made the way down into the corner, it was versus from McGregor into turn number 1, and McGregor, well, it was the case, Addy I think there was trying to find the space which was only going to close on him on cold tires in the open lap, but then it all kicked off behind. We see there David Whitehouse having to spin slightly at the back of the camera in a separate instant, and this is where we then saw Addy caught on that inside with Chris Danes and what was Jamie Dorey. But we look back to the flag, and also we can see that Ben Bennyworth having a nightmare moment. But in fact, as we now look from Chris Danes' perspective, what exactly happened to Chris Danes? Well, making his way down towards their turn number 1, got a good start and actually put himself between Jamie Dorey and Adam Delmont right off the line. A good move there from Chris Danes. And as he tried to go round the outside of what was there, I believe that was Higgins Jr. That's when it all started. And as Higgins Jr. and himself made their way into turn number 2. You can see there how Dorey trying to go around the outside, and Dorey coming across and in contact with Danes, and then Addy just getting caught with them, and it all went horribly wrong. But indeed, it was the case. A tidy jump start, as you say, for Michael Crees, but meanwhile Ben Beddyworth involved with the shunts as well. It has been a nightmare start for these guys, and as we look back to our live pictures right now, they are making their way up towards Moss Hairpin, and the field is still catching up. I think we do still have quite a bit of time before we are going and racing once again, but we will take a look back at what happened between Delaney and also Emmons at what was the Moss corner, which saw the two of them come together, and we're just trying to find that replay footage. Indeed, our safety car seen plenty of mileage today, and well, it's the case on a good day that safety car just stays parked. Then indeed, Gaz Williams, our driver behind the safety car, has an easy job. He just gets to watch the racing, but not today. If anything, it is quite the contrary. As we do try to see exactly what happened between Delaney and what was Emmons. Here we go, we get a replay of it, and they were battling the way into Moss corner. Oh, now that, I think Delaney got hooked on the front end of Emmons' car there, and the two of them came together in short order. We take another look at this, and in particular from what was the camera there, and it definitely looks as though the two drivers getting caught in one another, and I think Delaney hoping he could perhaps ride alongside Emmons or vice versa. Emmons trying to stick his nose in there, and it didn't work out for the pair of them. But as we return to live pictures now, the safety car is pulling away. It is the case we'll be going racing once again very shortly, and when we do, we'll have 14 minutes of racing, and it'll be John Higgins Sr. who takes us back to the restart. And he's already gone there in the run through 9. He's decided to go incredibly early, has Higgins Sr. Now, was this a smart move to go this early? Well, he's tried to make it work, but Lee Horn has reacted very well to it, and Jamie Dorey there in P3 staying with them. Adam Delmont, meanwhile, has been caught napping quite significantly, and Chris Danes as well, getting a good restart in that P8 position, and going hunting after John Burnham coming out to turn number 1. As they make the way out towards 2, Danes is going to immediately look around the outside here, and will Burnham be able to defend it? No, Danes has got the brakes on him as they roll the way down the hill, but meanwhile, Nigel Stock here. Well, remember, the Nigel Stock started P20, and it is the case, sorry, P19 I should say, and Stock has made his way up to P9 already. It is the case that Fortune has favoured him, I should say, and as he makes his way out of 3 and down towards turn number 5, he's now in a battle here with what is Higgins Jr. as they head towards turn number 5, but as they do, he loses the place as well. I think Stock recognised at the end of the day, take the points where you can, as meanwhile, Adam Delmont has had an off-track at Moss Hairpin. In this case, that hairpin has caught out so many drivers today, and Adam Delmont dropping down the order to P8 from P4. What exactly happened to Delmont, we'll take a look very shortly, but before we do, we have to cut here to our leaders, and in particular our top 3, where we can see Jamie Dorey looking up the inside here of Lee Horn as they make the way in towards turn number 8. And as they do, Lee Horn tucks in behind, and John Higgins Sr. under pressure still to lead this race as they roll the way on through, completed the first lap after the restart. But it definitely looks as though at this point Jamie Dorey now salivating at the prospect of winning the race today and going hunting, as we see Higgins Sr. getting a poor run out of the final corner, and Dorey able to get along his inside as they make their way across the timing line, and Dorey up the inside into turn 1. Lee Horn follows him through, and it's definitely Dorey up into lead this race, but can Lee Horn make it a 2-for-1 special, or will it be the case that John Higgins Sr. is able to keep Lee Horn at bay? I think the HSR driver's able to keep Horn at bay, although he drifts his way, goodness me, he drifts his way through turn number 2, and Lee Horn I think having to back out to give Higgins Sr. the time to recuperate the car, but now Lee Horn trying to go all the way around the outside, as meanwhile Gavin Gardner trying to get into the fight as well as they make the way through 3, and Gardner here on the offensive trying to make it 3 wide as we ride on board here with the Audi Sport Customer Racing driver for Verona Motorsport, and you can see there, goodness me, Lee Horn up the inside to outside on Higgins Sr. It is the case, they're not giving up the pair of them, it's elbows out racing here in the touring car racing class, and as they make the way out of turn number 5, they continue to push on, as we say hello there to Phil Duke on the YouTube channel, who says looks good, this absolutely enjoyed himself, but right now this battle for P2 calms down for a brief moment, but it's the calm before the storm, and well, it's the case we could do with some rain in the UK, but here in Canada there won't be any rain because it's not simulated on iRacing, and indeed the storm is in terms of battling for position as they head up towards turn number 8, and as they do, you can see how Lee Horn at this point caught up behind Higgins Sr. and Gavin Gardner's trying to go round the outside inside, and as he rolls outside to his side here, it is the case. He's going to be back on the outside into turn number 10. Lee Horn defending hard here for that P3. He doesn't want to lose the position, and Chris Daines is getting into this mix, flashing his lights there, and I think it is the case that Gardner at this point will now try and work with his teammate to soldier their way up the order into lead this race, or get themselves at least both onto that podium as they make their way out to turn 1. And it's another safety car. In fact, my apologies, we didn't catch that. It is another safety car as they all head down towards what is turn number 2, and as we see that couple of drivers getting it wrong, and in fact Michael Creed's off circuit there to let the field on through because he is technically a lap down, although he'll be given an opportunity to unlap himself, I'm sure. But what exactly has happened to cause this, I think we're now finding out. I think it was an incident involving Mark Sykes and also Matthew Addy, and let's take a look. Oh, goodness me. Well, that was at the restart, that instant, and that's multiple drivers being caught up there. Well, there's going to be more to it than just simply that. Let's try and find out exactly what happened, but Mark Sykes being caught up in all of that, and, well, it was the case. We get a quick replay back to just before it all started, but that was a nightmare instant for all those drivers, and indeed, we're just trying to get a little bit more than just that in terms of the footage available to us, but indeed, it was Mark Sykes. Well, in fact, that wasn't on the... Was that on the restart lap? No, I don't think so. I think it was the lap after the restart. But indeed, we stay here with Mark Sykes for this lap. And I think it might have been a bit of an instant further up the road. And that's what led to everything kicking off in terms of all coming into contact with one another. Now, as they charged up towards turn number 8 here, you're going to see it's the case that Higgins Jr. having to go defensive versus was Adam Delmont after Delmont had his off on the return to racing. As they made the way down towards what was turn number 8 here, all started to kick off with Higgins Jr. defending versus Delmont, and as they battled their way through the corners, I think it was the case that Higgins Jr. holding on well for the time being as they made the way through the final corner. Was it the case that Higgins Jr. lost the pace here? He may have, as we can see here, to go defensive versus Delmont into turn number 1, and I think this is where the instant all begins. They came down through the corner, heading through that right-hander, and Higgins Jr. there onto the grass at contact with Delmont, and that's what kicked it all off with Mark Sykes there being a bystander, much like Nigel Stott and Delaney being caught up, and then Sykes having no control of the car, getting caught up with both what was Addy and Emmons involved in that. My goodness, it was an 8-car pile-up, but as we now look back to the live pictures, that was very unfortunate, no doubt about that. But indeed, we are still behind the safety car for at least one more lap, and a good chunk of the field does need to catch on up here, and we are running out of race time. We've only got now just shy of what is 8 minutes remaining, or 8.5 minutes, and by the time we get restarted, I suspect it'll be about 7.5 to 7 minutes of racing action remaining. As our drivers make their way on through at the moment, it is the case that it has been an absolutely crazy race. It must be said in race number 3, it's almost as if everybody was saving it for the final hurrah. But as they make the way around right now, I think our drivers will be told to calm things down a little bit, given there is still some racing to go and it's not over yet. But indeed, what a spectacle this is going to present, with the fact that we have Jamie Dorey, who's currently our leader, ahead of John Higgins Sr. And Higgins Sr. absolutely defending as hard as possible for that P2, and Lee Horn trying to find his way on through. And then Verana Motorsports, Gavin Garner and Chris Daines, P4, P5, they will be looking to try and make the way into lead this race or onto that overall podium. And as they make their way down the back straight here, will we see that safety car pulling away, given the fact the majority of the field has caught up, or will it be the case that we have one more lap? I suspect we will be going racing come the end of this lap, given the fact the majority of the field is there, but we'll have to wait to see what the safety car does. And indeed, our safety car driver of Gaz Williams will be told what he needs to do. Is he running away, or is it the case that they're staying with him as he makes his way up towards turn number 8 at this point? I think it is the case. We're still behind the safety car for a little bit longer, and this Jamie Dorey is hugging the back of the safety car all the way to where it pulls on in. Well, I think it might be the case we're going to have one more lap behind the safety car. We are, unfortunately, so it is the case. We will only have about 5 minutes of racing plus the final lap, and I think that is to compensate to let what is our last couple of drivers catch up to the field. I think some drivers at this point may be a little bit frustrated by that decision, but of course we want everybody to be able to go racing at the end of the day. And as we look further down the order here, Delaney has been in the wars today. It has to be said, the SVPMR with the Ignium driver, it is the case that things have not gone his way. And, well, in race number 3, there has been no change in fortune. But whilst we are waiting for the restart, then let's take you through that order from top to bottom. It is Jamie Dorey, our leader, going into the final 5 minutes of the race when we get restarted, ahead of John Higgins Senior. Then Lee Horn P3, followed by Gavin Gardner P4, Chris Daines P5. That's your top 5. Then it'll be Mark Harrismith in P6, and Mark Harrismith has gained a lot since the start of this race, and the Crest Autosport Pebbles driver will look to try and gain more as we head to the checker flag. John Burnham P7, followed by Rob McGregor P8. The biggest loser at the start of the race in terms of places, losing 6 places. Paul Scott in P9, David Whitehouse P10, gaining 5 since the start, and then Matthew Addy P11, Ben Minnieworth P12, Nigel Stott P13, Tom Delaney P14, and then we have John Higgins Jr. P15, Adam Delmont P16, and then it's Michael Crees P17 with Matt Emmons P18, and then Mark Sykes with a retirement, classified as P19, albeit with that retirement I don't think he'll be classified in the race results, but the safety car has pulled off, and it is the case as our drivers make the way down the back straight. We'll be going racing for 5 more minutes of racing action here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, or Motorsport 69 in short, for round number 3. It's race number 3, and well, who will come out to the top? Will it be Jamie Dorey as he bunches up the field massively? He is bleeding the time out of this restart, but he will go soon, and when he does, will they all be able to follow him? Well, I think that's Jamie Dorey has already gone then as they made their way into turn number 8. He bunched the field up and he's gone on the charge. And as he does, a great restart there for Jamie Dorey, dropping John Higgins Senior to an extent. And meanwhile, we can see there Chris Daines and Gavin Gardner very close to one another, as meanwhile much further back they're caught up in the restart. Here's the case that Thomas Delaney really struggling out, and as they roll the way through the right hander, John Higgins Jr. trying to go on the offensive for P14 as they head down towards turn number 1. Higgins up the inside here, and I think Delaney's going to let this one go, as meanwhile Delmont also coming on through for P15, and Delaney loses 2 places through one run to turn 1 as they make their way up towards turn number 2. But meanwhile, further up the order, we can see here that Rob McGregor making his way past John Burnham for P7. We just caught the end of it coming out to turn number 2, and up into 3 they go. And as they roll the way through the right hander here, it is the case that we've got Adam Delmont has just found his way past John Higgins Jr. So up into P14 now is Adam Delmont. Still places to be gained, but the one who's really trying to hold on to places right now is this man, John Higgins Senior, who, as we ride on board his gearbox here, has got Lee Horn and Chris Daines. Oh, goodness me, and that is Jamie Dorey off, and that is a surprise. And with Jamie Dorey getting it seemingly wrong, it's now John Higgins Senior who finds himself a lead in the race again, and can he hold on to the very end of the race here with only 4 minutes to go? And if so, he'll be a new winner in the Hall of Fame of what is the NXTCC. But on top of that as well, it'll be a surprise and a very welcome one to him, to be sure. But meanwhile, you can see Lee Horn going around the outside, and Higgins Senior loses the rear of the car there, and he loses 2 places through one corner. And as Lee Horn, who leads with Chris Daines up into P2, Gavin Gardner couldn't come on through, but that was a surprise there with regards to Jamie Dorey getting it wrong. And we'll try and get a replay of that if we can. But as they make their way down towards turn number 1, you can see a flash of lights there from Chris Daines trying to distract Lee Horn, but Lee Horn's not going to fall for that one surely as they make their way through turn number 1. But as they do, Gavin Gardner here caught up behind Higgins as they make their way into 2 and find a face for Hyundai Elantra. And to be fair, with the lack of race time we've had, it means the Elantras will not experience their decaying pace towards the end as aggressively now, and they can go racing just as much as the rest of the cars here in our touring car class racing as they make their way through turn number 3. But as our top 4 make the way on through, Jamie Dorey not too far behind trying to get back in this race, but meanwhile Lee Horn here finds himself with Chris Daines up the inside into turn number 4. Daines is going to try and outbrake him on the outside here, but Lee Horn's not going to give this up, and as they make their way side by side through the first part of Moss Hairpin, and now the second part they give one another racing room, but Chris Daines has held it round the outside there, and now he'll have the drag race speed down the back straight here. That Audi's so strong on the straights when it's in the tow or without a tow compared to the Honda, and you can see Chris Daines here just able to pull ahead, but now Lee Horn in the tow. Can he come on back? That is the question as they make the way up towards turn number 8. My gut feeling says Lee Horn will have a look, but he's not close enough to go for it, and indeed Lee Horn has to back out there as they make the way through turn at number 8. And as they roll the way through the S's and up towards the final corner, 2 minutes left on the clock, 2 more laps, and Gavin Gardner there taking a look to the inside into turn number 10, and he comes together with what is there, John Higgins Senior, and Will Gardner dead to dream he can put his nose up the inside, and in the end he's lost 2 places, and he's lost another one as it's the case. You can see that Mark Harrismith has made his way up into P5, and Mark Harrismith here is coming on through and enjoying it, as meanwhile we can see Jamie Dorey trying to go for the move for P3, but to no avail into turn number 2. as they roll the way through the second corner. It is the case that Paul Scott finds his way up the inside there. John Burnham for P8, Burnham down to P9, and we see David Whitehouse there now up into a top 10 position in P10 and trying to bring home a top 10 finish. He'll deserve it in the fact that he's really pushed for it all day here at the Motorsport Circuit, and he tries to hunt down what is John Burnham as they make the way down towards turn number 5, but as they charge on down, Matthew Addy here in P11. It is the case defending from Nigel Stock as they roll the way for the penultimate time through the Moss hairpin, and as they do, heading through the right hand, and no change for now. They stay as they were. Michael Crees meanwhile makes his way past Adam Delmont. I wonder if there was a little bit of a knot there with Adam Delmont, but Delmont just simply lost it on circuit, but you can see how it is the case that Evans hit a lap down, stuck behind Crees as they make the way up towards turn number 8. In fact, as they make the way down the back straight, we look to Nigel Stock here battling side by side with Addy as they head into the braking zone, and Stock going round the outside of Addy into turn number 8 and getting the job done. But as they do, it is the case we do have a bit of a disconnection briefly for Mark Arrowsmith as Gavin Gardner goes up the inside there for P5 and now tries to out-drag the Elantra down towards turn number 1. But as they head into the first corner, Arrowsmith's going to try and hang it around the outside here. Gardner on the inside, no way through for Gardner. He has to drop back. We're on the final lap of racing here at Motorsport today. It's race number 3, and well, right now it is Chris Daines who leads, breaking away from Lee Horn, but John Higgins Senior meanwhile having to defend for P3 versus what is Jamie Dorey here as they roll the way through the right hand of what is turn number 3, and as they head down towards turn number 5 in the charge, Jamie Dorey literally looking from left to right, trying to get in the head of Higgins Senior, tried to find a weakness in the armour of the HSR car, but he's not finding the one through right now. And as Higgins Senior rolls his way through the hairpin, not too many more corners to go. He just needs to nail the exit here and then hold to the inside to the S's. But can he do it? He gets the ball run out of the hairpin. It's the charge down towards turn number 8 right now, and as he heads down there, immediately tuck into that inside line. He's got a long way to go, of course, but he knows that Jamie Dorey is right there. They head all the way down towards the braking zone, and as they do, the HSR driver defends hard. Meanwhile, your race leaders head through the final couple of corners. Dorey's trying to go around the outside here. Higgins Senior defends it hard. There's a bit of a door tap between the two of them, but meanwhile, making his way through the final corner here. He's had to come through the order, but he's done it. It makes it 2 out of 3 races where he's taken a win. It is Chris Daines from Verona Motorsport who wins overall and in the pro class ahead of Lee Horn, and then John Higgins Senior held on to the line for P3 overall, and that is the win in the Prime class ahead of Jamie Dorey P4, Mark Arrowsmith P5, and then Gavin Gardner P6 ahead of Rob McGregor P7, Paul Scott P8, John Burnham P9, David Whitehouse P10, holding on to take his first top 10 finish of the season for JBW Racing, and then Nigel Stock P11, Matthew Addy P12, Ben Bennyworth and John Higgins Jr. P13, P14, Adam Delmont P15, and a difficult day for Adam Delmont, Michael Crees P16, and then Tom Delaney P17 as he's the last driver to head to the line. Matt Evans finishing P18, a lap down, and of course the early retirement of Mark Sykes here. But my goodness, what a dramatic race from start to finish. 2 safety cars as well, mean that we only really had in effect about 8 minutes of racing, but the racing we did have was definitely intense, and well, it is the case that Chris Daines in the end emerging victorious come the finish. Indeed, Verona Motorsport taking a win in all 3 races today, and it wasn't to be a triple 1-2 for Verona Motorsport. They've made it 2 1-2s out of 3, and I don't think they'll complain at that. But let's take a look at those race results, ladies and gents, subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they come for race number 3 of round 3 of the NXTCC 2022. So in the end, it was Chris Daines taking the win by 6.5 tenths over Lee Horn, and John Higgins Senior completing the overall podium. Of course, Chris Daines, our pro winner, John Higgins Senior, our pro-am winner, holding on in a brilliant effort there for that P3, ahead of Jamie Dorey. Mark Arrowsmith completing the top 5, and Gavin Gardner coming home in P6, 3rd place in the Pro-Am class here. Wasn't to be a win in the Pro-Am class in this race, but still, given how things played out, I think he'll take the points tonight with open arms. Rob McGregor P7, Paul Scott P8, John Burnham P9, and then David Whitehouse in P10. That's your top 10. And then Nigel Stock just missing out in the top 10 there in P11, ahead of Matthew Addy, Ben Bennyworth, John Higgins Jr. and Adam Delmont. And well, John Higgins Jr. and Adam Delmont both having very difficult races today, and they'll be looking to bounce back in round number 4. Michael Crees, P16, not able to recapture that form from race number 1. Tom Delaney, P17, and then Matt Evans, P18. And we, of course, had the retirement of Mark Sykes early on in the race after that major smash on the opening half of the race. He will be classified, I think, as did not finish, and as a result will not be scoring points given the limited number of laps completed. Only in the end, what were 12 laps completed here today in race number 3, and Sykes only able to achieve 4 before the instant. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is the case. We now get ready for our post-round interviews with our drivers. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in approximately 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully within the next 5 minutes, those post-round interviews, and we'll hear our insights from drivers up and down the field and what their thoughts were on the racing here today at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, or what we'd like to refer to as Canadian Thruxton. We will see what they've got to say very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's kick off our post-round interviews with our selection of drivers. We have got Chris Daines, the pro driver in the 111 car, coming up first. It is the case, of course, picking up what were effectively 3 wins in the pro class and 2 out of 3 overall wins. A very happy driver today, no doubt, and we'll hear his thoughts. Also, John Higgins Sr. in what is our second interview, and we're battling in the midfield and then bringing home that 3rd place in the final race. Lee Horn, who did not make the first race, of course, and then really has had to recover this evening, and a brilliant recovery effort. And then we'll hear from Matt Edmonds, who races started off strong, but then started to fall away as the racing went on. But as we bring Chris Daines into the interview room, Chris, a brilliant day for Verano Motorsport, and indeed for yourself today at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. A win in race 1, a win in race 3, a 2nd place in race 2 overall, but a winning class in race number 2 as well. It's got to be the perfect night, surely.
That was great fun. That was really good fun. I've done some practicing yesterday for this event, and I think we all very quickly realised it was an Audi circuit. So I took advantage of that as anybody should and would really. As the Audi wasn't that great in the last, not the last race, the first race that I was in. So yeah, you take advantage of these situations, and that was a good night. Really fun.
Oh, indeed. And it all started off on a major positive in qualifying, where we saw yourself and your teammate Gavin Gardner trying to work together in order to be able to lock out that front row. We saw you take that pole position time quite early, whereas Gardner was pipped to the post on the front row to a degree by Jamie Dorey. Just take us through qualifying there. Was it the perfect session for you guys, or was there a bit more out there?
No, I think it was pretty good. We worked it well. We what's the word I'm looking for? We planned it to so we would both give each other a bit of draft halfway through each part of the session. So 7 minutes each would give a draft to each other. So yeah, no, it worked out quite well. And obviously the draft in these cars is fairly big. I think it's about 1.3 to 1.4 seconds you can be behind and still get that tow. So as long as you're within that time in qualifying and you have a teammate to do that with, because if you ain't got a teammate, which I found out in previous seasons, no one likes helping you. So it was, I think that was a good session for us. Jamie Dorey pipped Gavin, but good lap from there from Dorey.
Oh, indeed. And then going into race number 1, of course, it was the case. Quite a hot circuit, but a great start from yourself, leading away from the line. Was the plan always just to try and charge away after the start? Because it was an almost perfect launch.
Yeah, I think what didn't help, it made it look like an even better launch, was the fact that I think Jamie got a really bad wheel spin start, so he dropped back, and Gavin put himself into P2. So the idea was if Gavin was a lot quicker than me to start off with, I was going to let him through and see if I can push him. And then if we were in those positions towards the end of the race, he was going to let me back through, but there was no need because he was giving me a bit of a push. And I think when Delmont was behind us in that race, it would have been impossible for him to overtake both of us because we were just working so well as a team to keep that tow and keep Gavin ahead of Delmont. So yeah, no, really well planned out that race.
Oh, indeed. And that plan playing out well, and it saw a 1-2 for Verano Motorsport come the checker flag. And then race number 2 saw you both start in that front row. But there was a bit of a mistake that crept in at Moss Hairpin, and it saw you have to fight your way back up to P2.
Yeah, it's easily done. I mean, I've done it a few times in practice, and you come down that hill so quickly. It's so deceiving because you're swooping down that hill. When you're on the anchors, it's, you know, half your braking is done going down the hill, so you think you're scrubbing off the speed that you need to get to that corner, but that tiny little uphill just before that right kink is really difficult to scrub off the remaining speed if you're over speeding into the corner. So yeah, it's easily done. It was a rare mistake, but I'm human. It happens. But a great fight back through for sure, and I really enjoyed that.
Well, indeed, Chris, as you say, it does show you're human after all, though I must admit that's the first ever mistake I've seen you make out of the circuit in all the series I've seen you in. But with that aside, and save for the archive, I'm going to keep that in the special collection. It's the case, looking ahead to race number 3, of course, with the great doubling of 1-2s in races 1 and 2. We had the reverse grid announced as a P9 reverse grid. Did yourself and Gavin think about how you could play that to your advantage before the race got underway, given how the race turned out? Was there a particular strategy you had in mind for coming through the field?
Yeah, I mean, I almost knew there was going to be a safety car, at least one, because the grid's very mixed up and everyone's defending hard, and with the throwing in the difficulty of overtaking around this track, it was always going to be a safety car at some point. So it was effectively me and Gavin just say, look, let's just hold position, wait for a few to fall off the track, and push each other through, and we'd both go through at the same time. But I had such a good launch, went through the middle of two cars, and I thought, well, that plan's out the window already. So because Gavin was two cars behind me at that point, so and then the safety car came out straight away. So yeah, that was it. It was a good drive through the pack though.
Oh, indeed. And just a brief word on that launch, a phenomenal launch where you parted the seas between, I think it was two Honda Civics that looked stationary by comparison. Have you been working all week on that launch? Because it just looked absolutely fluid off the line.
No, so I've got I set profiles on my pedals, and with the Huizenveld sprints, or ultimates or whatever you've got, Huizenveld wise, you can set your profiles, and I could set the accelerator for my TCR settings, which I used to have years ago, and I put them in for this evening's racing. And they still work like a charm because it doesn't give you too much revs at the beginning. It limits the wheel spin, and you've got a nice curvature on the throttle, which gives you not 100% throttle. It's not a linear throttle, so you have a nice curvature on the throttle, which doesn't give you too much wheel spin. So that's sort of the secrets I have towards different profiles for different cars, which is a good feature for the Huizenvelds.
Oh, indeed. And just coming on to the race itself, after giving away some trade secrets there, with the multitude of safety cars that we saw, but you gradually making your way up through the order, and indeed some drama very late on in the race. I have to ask, when you found yourself batting right up the top there, and we did see Jamie Dorey fall off circuit right towards the end, was that the point where you thought, right, now's the time to strike and make the charge?
Yeah, as soon as Jamie, I mean, when Jamie had that amazing restart, he was. I mean, we had 4 minutes to catch him, and I had two cars to get past and then catch Jamie. And I said to Gavin, I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to catch Jamie because he was so fast. But when he made that mistake, I knew I was in a shot for a win to win it. I was quite surprised Jamie made that mistake. He had a good 2 second lead, or a second and a half, whatever it was. And but again, as it's shown, it was the same corner as I went off, and it's very easy to do when you're pushing. You've got that adrenaline. So um, yeah, so when I saw him go off, I knew I had a shot at winning the race, and yeah, pulled it off towards the end, and a great battle there with Lee Horn at the end. He was really pushing me hard towards the end. He set some blistering lap times, kept me honest for the last couple of laps. We were side by side, so great respect there from Lee, and a big shout out to him.
Oh, indeed, it was a brilliant battle between the two of you, and one of the battles of the season so far. But looking ahead now from a brilliant day for yourself at what was the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and going ahead to Alton Park in a week's time. Firstly, will we be seeing you at the British Circuit?
Potentially, it all depends on what goes on at home with me. I've got quite a bit going on at home at the moment, so when I do have the time, I can jump into these races, which I thoroughly love. So if I can make it, then yes, I will do, because these next gen do some brilliant leagues and great racing, and the commentary from yourself is brilliant, and I always want to get in on the action. So yes, if I can be there, I will. If not, I'll be there in the YouTube chat with love.
Oh, well, we do appreciate that, Chris. And just before we do let you go, is it the case that you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to anyone live on the broadcast this evening?
Yep, NXTGEN, as usual, for hosting fantastic leagues throughout. Yourself, Paul, for doing great commentary, and all of Rana Motorsport, and Gavin Gardner as well for racing so solidly every race he's been in. So big shout out to all those guys and all the guys back at Rana supporting us on the chat and in our Discord.
Well, with that, Chris, thank you very much for joining us in the interview room. A brilliant set of results today, and we do hope you can join us in a week's time at Alton Park. But until then, we wish you all the best.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Catch you soon, mate.
Take care. So hearing there from Chris Staines, an absolutely brilliant night for the Verano Motorsport drive, indeed for the Verano Motorsport team. And it was very interesting to hear there how he gauged, particularly in that race number 3, that until Jamie Dorey had the off, there wasn't that feeling as though he was going to be able to catch Dorey, with Dorey having that absolutely sensational restart in the run into the S's. That, of course, in the way it played out in actuality, Dorey would make that mistake, and then Chris Staines could take the fight to Lee Horn for the win. And as we get ready now to bring John Higgins Sr. into the interview room, our Pro-Am driver there, we do see a Motorsport Magpie representing Darren at Whitehouse in the YouTube chat saying personal best 10th place after no practice. Indeed, a brilliant 10th place from yourself. And it is the case, not Darren, my apologies, David Whitehouse. I don't know where I got Darren from, but it is the case, apologies, David, but a brilliant P10 for yourself. But now let's bring John Higgins Sr. into the interview room. Indeed, our Pro-Am driver having a difficult race 1, but having a much better race 2 and definitely race 3. So as we do get ready to bring Higgins Senior on in, it is the case that he joins us now. And as he joins us in the interview room, John, a night of two halves really for yourself. Didn't work out too well in qualifying or race number one. Went better in race number two, and then an absolutely brilliant race number three. Would you say it's ended on a high?
Absolutely, Paul. It was always going to be a race of two halves. You know, I think I said in the interview last week that we thought the Hyundai was going to be an absolute rocket ship round there, and for some reason it isn't. It just doesn't like, you know, when the temperature's up in the first race, it's such a handful. It absolutely murders the tyres, sort of after 3 laps, and yeah, there's been a lot of head scratching between the team. You know, Junior was on suicide watch last night. He was all for changing cars and taking a points hit, and he was just like, look, just do the first race, get through it, take what you can. It's a bit like touring cars, you know, try and position yourself, get a decent result in race two, and then hopefully you nail it in the reverse grid and get a decent starting position. And you know, we knew the track was going to be cold, and we knew the Hyundai was going to be quick in the last race. So yeah, I went for a quick drink to come back to be told that I'm on pole position. So it was like, oh god, here we go. But you know, I'm chuffed to bits with that. Just a shame there was safety car, and obviously Rob does some racing laps, because I think if the safety car hadn't came out, I don't think we'd have finished third. But you know, we'll take it. I'm pleased with that. So.
Oh, indeed. It was a very interesting night, and particularly there, coming on to your point, you mentioned about the Hyundai Elantra really struggling, particularly in the warmer of the races, and then as the temperatures cooled down, the car came to life there. Just on that, did you feel as though as we went through the evenings in the races, almost as if the car was becoming more racy? I know it's not a proper word, but it just felt as though you could actually get into a rhythm, particularly in race number two, where we saw you mixing it up in the midfield.
Yeah, the car just is alive, and it was okay in the second race, but it just isn't great. But in the third race, the track temp was only, I think, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, and it'd been like 107, I think, in the first race. So yeah, the car just comes alive. There's so much more grip, but it takes you a couple of laps to find out just how much more grip it's got, because you're just not quite sure. You know, fair dues. I think Rob was the quickest out of our team members tonight. No disrespect to Junes. Rob definitely had the pace, and he showed that in practice last night. You know, me and Junior couldn't get in out of a 27, and Rob was in a 26, even though the track temperature was really hot. So we knew the time was in the car. It's just trying to find it, and yeah, it was really tough. And I thought that Hyundai would have been an absolute rocket ship tonight. We were wrong, but yeah, to get third place, I'm pretty happy with that, really.
Oh, indeed. And we did see throughout the entirety of the session, whether it be in the racing or qualifying, that team spirit from the HSR shining through. None more so in qualifying, where we saw the three of you working together to try and give one another the toe down the back straight. Was the goal always in qualifying to try and give one another the slipstream?
Absolutely, because qualifying was, track temperature was up there at 106, so you know, we're struggling to start with, and that's the only way you're going to try and extract some time out of it, because it is quick in a straight line. It's just, you just cannot get the thing around the corners. It just wants to understeer, and then you're winding the brake bias so far back to try and help it turn in. It's then really sketchy, and if you miss your braking by half a meter, yeah, I think you saw it tonight, from all of us. The thing's completely sideways, and yeah, it was a real handful tonight, which was disappointing, because I thought we were in for a real dominant night, and it wasn't to be. And you know, the Audis, I think, were the strongest car tonight round there, closely followed by the Civics, and obviously Hyundai's at the back. But you know, we're looking at the long game. And that's what I said to the team when we had a chat last night, and we're all scratching our heads as, you know, as we go through September and October, particularly for the British rounds, and the track temperature is going to be a lot colder. So, you know, we're going to be in a much better position. And yeah, as much as there was desperation about let's sack it off and get another car, we're not doing that. That's not happening. So we'll stick with what we've got. I think we'll be really strong at some tracks, particularly later on in September and October. If it follows the months and the track temperature gets cold, then we'll be in a pretty decent position.
Oh, Oh, indeed. And just with regards to that final race in particular, a word on the battling for the lead. We saw you on a couple of occasions leading the race. Were you feeling as though you could perhaps potentially sneak it across the line and match what Gardner did back at Brands Hatch? Or were you always feeling as though you were going to drop away? 'Cause we saw brilliant battling between yourself and Lee Horn in particular.
Yeah, I knew it was, when you look in the mirror and you've got Lee behind you, you've got Chris, Gavin, who's blisteringly quick. Obviously, Jamie's there, although he chucks it off himself in the double right-hander, which I actually started laughing at because I was obviously in second place. So when I saw him go wide, I actually started laughing because Jamie's got a real thing about flashing his lights, but it happened so quickly I couldn't even flash my lights at him because I was just laughing my head off. But yeah, listen, it's good racing. There was obviously a few incidents tonight which have led to safety cars and bits and pieces, but do I think I was ever going to win that race? No. Absolutely not. I told you last week it wasn't a race-winning car in my hands, even if it was an absolute missile. So, we're still trying to get used to this, but we're getting some decent results, and we're pulling in the points. And I got the news broken to me from Jamie the other night that I'm getting moved into the pro category from the pro-ams. So, I'll take that as a compliment. I am not a pro driver at sim racing, but I'll take it as a compliment because to get moved in there, then fine, we'll go and hack it up with the big boys and see where we end up at the end of the season. So.
Indeed. Well, I must admit that is news to me as well, but we look forward to seeing you in that pro class at Alton Park onwards. And speaking of Alton Park, we head to that British circuit next week. Your thoughts on the circuit?
I love it. It's only 20 minutes away from where I live. I'm just outside Chester anyway, so I absolutely love Alton Park. It's going to be fast. If track temperature suits us, I think we'll be really quick there. And if you can get qualifying right, Alton Park's notoriously difficult to pass. So yeah, if you can position your car right, get a decent qualifying, and then position your car right, you're going to end up with some pretty decent results there, unless you get fired off. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
Oh, indeed. Well, we look forward to seeing what yourself and the team from HSR are able to achieve at Alton Park in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you live on air?
I gave a shout out to everybody last week, but just a big shout out to my dad, who I know watches on YouTube each week. So he usually turns off before the interviews, and I told him last night that I got interviewed last week, and he was like, "Oh, so Dad, if you're watching, I love you, dude, and I'll see you very soon."
Oh, well, I'm sure he will appreciate that message, and indeed, it is the case, of course, paying respect to the family, particularly our fathers at the end of the day. It's all in the family.
Absolutely.
But with that, John, congratulations on your results today, particularly at the Race 3 P3, and we look forward to seeing you coming back in full force in a week's time at Alton Park.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it as always.
All the best.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
So hearing there from John Higgins Sr., the Pro-Am driver who will be moving up to Pro as of the next round. It is the case, putting in a stellar set of performances, but in particular, really fighting against the car in races 1 and 2, and in the end, yielding that P3 come the finish. And what was never going to be the win in his eyes, but still that P3 will feel like a win, given the struggles that the team were having with the Hyundai Elantra. But given the fact we would expect as time goes on, track temperatures to drop on average, particularly in the United Kingdom, you can imagine that Elantra may be flying when they do go racing later in the season, but we'll have to wait to see if that's the case. But now we come to our third driver for the interview, and that is Lee Horn. And Lee Horn, of course, not starting the first race and only making 2 races. It is the case that he had a lot to make up for, but he made up for it with a 7th for the second, and let's hear his thoughts very shortly. In fact, as we do bring Lee Horn into the interview room. Lee, a very interesting night tonight. You didn't make race number 1 due to technical issues. A non-start there, starting from the back in race number 2, fought your way all the way up to P7. And then race number 3, with the assistance of the reverse grid at the start of the race, finding yourself right up the front and finishing P2 in the end. It's been a positive night, albeit perhaps not the night you expected.
No, it started on a massive low for me. Obviously, the technical issue, if I'm honest, because I need to probably put my cards down on the table because someone's going to leak it in a minute anyway. But when I selected to go into the session, I hovered over the Honda, which is the car that I'm using this season. I swear to God, I clicked on it, but for some reason, obviously, I must have missed it somehow because when I clicked join and I didn't realise I was still in the Audi. So I couldn't come out of the session and rejoin into another car because iRacing doesn't let you. So I wasn't going to drive a car which I shouldn't be driving, the Audi, so I had to sit it out. So basically, it was my own fault. Unless the game did do me over and I did select it, but I've never known that to happen. So yeah, that was the race one and qualifying out the way. Watched the broadcast, thought it was a fantastic race, and thought I'm going to get my head down and get stuck in there from the back. So yeah, things unfolded in front of me quite nicely, and coming up to P12 after the safety car from P20 was a bit of a bonus. And then had some fantastic battles with the Higgins guys and the Hyundais right through to the end. Right in the last corner, just pipping that last spot to get into 7th was just a great feeling. And then, yeah, moving on to the reverse grid draw, I had my hands together and I'm praying you to pull out 7. And 9 wasn't too bad, to be fair. It was close enough to give me a good chance to have a fight at the front. Unfortunately, the majority of the race time, as you know, was scuppered by safety cars. So the battling I did do was absolutely fantastic. It was an amazing move from Chris to get around the outside and me to get in front. I was planning on having a good old challenge on the last lap at him, but unfortunately I dropped back a little bit too much just towards the end of the beginning of the last lap. So it wasn't to be. But yeah, very, very happy overall with coming back from obviously a complete miss of race 1 and getting a 7th and then a 2nd. So yeah, really enjoyable racing. That track is phenomenal for touring cars. The battling was just intense.
Oh, indeed, and I don't think we could have put it better ourselves in terms of the type of night you've had, and well, particularly focusing on that race too. Firstly, we saw that 4-way battle for P7 that ran for so long alongside the HSR drivers, and also I believe it was at the time Ben Bennyworth also trying to get into the mix there, and of course that mix of what was multiple cars, whether it be the Audi, or alternatively the Honda that you drive, or alternatively the Hyundai Elantra. Just take us through when you're racing in a category where there's 4 of you and you're all in different cars, just having to really balance that set of strengths and weaknesses of your car versus the others.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to work out as quickly as you can where you're stronger than they are, and obviously where they're weak, and to try and then capitalise on trying to set yourself up for moves. The Elantra was not very quick through the double right-hander, as you probably saw, and that's where I was sort of setting myself up to try and get alongside. Which ultimately, towards at the end of that race, as you saw, I managed to hang it around the outside, keep my nose in around the outside at the top of the hill down the right-hander, and then for the left-hander, kept it in. He went a little bit wide because I'd kept myself in there nicely and managed to just pull it all up. I was literally begging it wasn't going to understeer any more than it did, and had to drop to 2nd to pull it out the last corner. But yeah, it's you've really got to work it out, and it's a fine balance because across the whole lap, it sort of equals itself out. So you've really got to be on your top game all the way round to capitalise when you've got that little bit of a stronger advantage for that small area.
Oh, indeed. And then coming on to race number 3, of course, with the safety car and also the number of incidents and mistakes made by drivers around you, none more so than, of course, the drama of Jamie Dorey getting it wrong at the Moss Hairpin at turn number 5. When you were battling for a lead with Jamie, Chris, and also John Higgins Sr., I have to ask, was there a point where you think to yourself, we're on for the win here?
Yeah, and to be honest, when Jamie got in front, and as Jamie was up front, I thought, in all practice sessions as well, he's been ahead of me. He's been that little bit quicker than me. I thought I've got a real good chance of a podium. I wasn't really thinking the win. Then when he threw it off, I was like, well, I felt for him obviously, but I was like, there's a chance here. And while Chris was sort of off the scene, I had the Lantras behind me. John, I was like, I was feeling pretty good. But then it all started to get a bit closer and the battling went on and Chris came up and yeah, the safety cars didn't help me really. I think I maybe stood a better chance if I didn't have the 2nd safety car. But that sort of gave Chris that chance. He made some good moves behind me to get up. And then, yeah, like I say, it was a great move by Chris. I don't know if you saw it on the stream, but we went 2 by 2 around that double right-hander with absolutely no contact. It was brilliant. It was scary at the same time.
Oh, indeed, it was absolutely beautiful, and we did catch it on the stream. They're great racing respect between the two of you, and we hope to see plenty more racing like that as the season continues. And speaking of season continuing, Alton Park next week, we return to the United Kingdom. Your thoughts on the Cheshire circuit?
Oh, I love Alton. I don't like it when it's too hot, mind, because the Hondas does struggle, especially race 1 with understeer and grip when it's too hot. But I like it when it cools down a bit. And that track is another really good touring car racing track. Still very difficult, like around here for overtaking, but should produce some really good battling. So yeah, very much looking forward to Oulton Park next week.
Oh, we look forward to seeing you tackle the Oulton Park circuit. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out live on air?
Yeah, as usual, just like to thank all our sponsors: Thrustmaster, Farstar, PowerMax, Joyce Design, Next Level Racing, IMB, and obviously Mark Sykes Designs for doing all these absolutely wonderful liveries, and anybody that's tuning in to watch the entertainment.
Oh, well, with that, Lee, I'm sure our sponsors will appreciate it, but we do appreciate you joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your race results tonight, particularly that second place in race number 3, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks yourself as well. Another great broadcast. Cheers.
My pleasure. All the best.
Thank you, mate. Bye.
So hearing there from Lee Horn, and indeed Lee Horn, as always, a very chipper and very happy driver in the case. It didn't work out in race number 1 due to that technical situation, as he was saying there. But come race number 2 and race number 3, things completely swinging the other way around, driving his way up through the order in race number 2 and using the safety car to his advantage. And then race number 3 being right at the thick end of the battling, enjoying the battling with Chris Staines. And we saw that 2-wide moment between the pair of them through what was the Moss hairpin, where Chris Staines went round the outside to take the position, but indeed Lee Horn definitely battling up then. You can imagine now he will be a force to be reckoned with, and particularly at Oulton Park next week he should go quite strong. But with Lee Horn having now left us, it is the case. We come on to our final interviewee of the evening, and that is Matt Emmons. And we can hear now from our pro driver, who has had, I think, a night that he may not want to remember as much as some of the other individuals we've interviewed, but it may have been an entertaining night for him all the same. And as he joins us in the interview room, Matt, as you join us now, it's the case. It hasn't been the greatest of evenings for yourself, and compared to some, your results have gone a bit backwards tonight. But the highlight, I think, was the P9 in race number 1.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. It was a lot better than I was expecting, considering I've had no practice going into tonight. Been a bit busy with home life and work and stuff, so I'm happy with a P9 and P12 because I didn't think I'd be on pace, to be honest.
Well, indeed, it was the case. We did see from the outset in qualifying, whilst it was a very, very tight qualifying field, the pace was there in the car. And of course, with no practice as well, that meant your qualifying session was just as much finding the pace as it was trying to set a strong lap. How did you feel qualifying went?
Really well. Like I said, I was fully expecting to be towards the tail end of the pack. I know there's some very fast drivers in this championship, and I know I couldn't find the time to get the practice in, so to be able to come out in P9 in race 1 and everything, I can't complain, to be honest. And I finally taught myself how to set these cars off the line without bogging.
Well, it was a great qualifying position, converting that P8 into a P9 in the end. And race 1, of course, was perhaps our least dramatic of the 3 races, or at least we did not have the safety car in race number 1, unless my memory serves me correctly. But just racing out there, of course, and getting used to running around this very fast-paced circuit. Just take us through in your mind, when you're running in that midfield pack, drivers are close, you've got these sweeping bends, the downhill run into turn number 5, and everything else in between. What are you watching out for there, particularly given you haven't had the chance to practice?
A gap in front of me, or not making sure that I leave a door open for the guy behind me, to be honest. As I said, I just wanted to. I took race 1 as my practice session, thinking if I can just find the pace, find the lines, find where it's going to be good to overtake, and learn where the Honda was strongest. I knew race 2 and race 3 would be a bit better for me, but it kind of went, like you said, backwards from race 1.
Indeed, and now we come on to race number 2, of course, and having started from P9 on the grid, we did see that things went quite wrong quite early on and being involved in some incidents, but in particular, it wasn't the case that the car was taken out of the race completely, but still, not the way you wanted it to play out.
No, I mean, it was my own mistake, I think, in race 2, yeah, carried too much speed on the cold tyres and ran wide at turn 2 that put me to the back, and then from there, it was try and catch back up as best I can and just score some points, really. And obviously try and get in the reverse grid draw, which I think I was P12. So yeah, I was on the chance of it, so to speak.
Did you manage to sneak your way into P12 and therefore into reverse grid draw? But of course, it was a P9 that was drawn in the end from the pot. And well, it is the case that with that in mind, did that change the way you looked at race number 3 in terms of, okay, we've got a lot of fighting to do here?
No, I just thought I just need to finish. If I can finish P12 again, I'm happy. It's more points on the board. If I can get higher up, it's a bonus. But obviously, it wasn't to be with the couple of incidents that I got involved in.
Indeed, and one of those incidents in particular, I think it was between yourself and Thomas Delaney coming out of the Moss hairpin at turn number 5. We saw the two of you hooked together there. It looked as though it was just a case of a little bit of miscommunication between the cars.
Yeah, I don't blame Tom. It was 50-50 in my opinion. I had nowhere to go, and I didn't realize how close he was. And yeah, it just ended up, like I said, pinning us together and putting us both into the wall.
Indeed, and then after both of you had repaired your cars, of course, and coming back to the circuit, we of course saw 2 safety cars in race number 3, which meant our amount of race time was no more than 8 minutes. Did you feel as though when we had the second safety car, it was more of a case of, okay, well, the race is really over at this point, there's not much else here for me?
Well, I had the minute and a half of repair, so I came out a lap down. So I managed to catch the back of the pack, and then I just thought, well, I'll stay out of the way and try and have a bit of a fun while I can. I think I had a good battle with Creasy and Delmont at one point. So yeah, it was just try and avoid any incidents and ruin anyone else's races, but at the same time, try and enjoy myself and try and have a bit of fun.
Indeed, that's what it's all about in the world of sim sport, or indeed real world motorsport as well. But looking ahead, of course, to the fun that lies at Alton Park, how are you feeling for the British circuit in a week's time?
Well, it's my local track, so I'm kind of hoping for some good results. I've had a lot of practice there in TCR and MX5s and stuff, so I'm quite happy with how next week might go if I can find the pace that I know I've got.
Well, we'll be excited to see you take to your home circuit effectively and see how you get on at Alton Park. But just before we do let you go, Matt, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to live on air?
Thanks to everyone at NXTGEN for running this championship, and thanks to you for what I'm sure will be again another amazing broadcast. And thanks everybody for watching.
Alrighty, well, with that, Matt, thank you for joining us in the interview room as always. And well, perhaps it wasn't to be today in terms of the results, in terms of their trend, but I'm glad to hear you had fun out on the circuit, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time at Alton Park.
Thanks, Paul. See you in a bit.
All the best. So, having heard there from Matt Emmons, and indeed quite a happy mood in the Matt Emmons camp, in the fact that whilst he wasn't able to practice going into tonight, still had the opportunity to have some great battles in the races, and well, whilst it didn't go his way, still seeing the positives, and you can imagine that Emmons will be definitely on the charge at Alton Park and seeing what he could do in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community after tonight, given the fact that we've had the intense race in action and this series continues to deliver, and perhaps you're interested in potentially signing up for this series or a future series we run on iRacing, or indeed other platforms as well in the sim racing world, then why not check out our official website? That is the Next Gen Racing website at www.nextgenracing.co.uk. And as you can see on screen, it is the case with our newly published website, the home of clean and fair sim racing for all. It is the case we're taking our brand to the next level with the website, and you can take a look through all the series we run, indeed the current standings, the upcoming series, and everything else in between, and find out more about Next Gen Racing in terms of its history and where we're looking to go from here. But as we do return to the links and whatnot, it is the case that if you're not inclined to go to our website, you could always go to our Facebook group. If you're a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing and find out similar details there and interact directly with members of our community. But now we must look ahead to next time, where it is the case round number 4 lies in wait on Thursday the 25th of August 2022, and Alton Park is the venue. It's going to be tight, it's going to be narrow, it's going to be bumpy with multiple undulations, but who will come out on top? Given the fast and furious racing that we saw in round number 3 today at the Motorsport Circuit, Alton Park is only going to up the ante, and with overtaking being such a challenge, track position will be so critical, and you can imagine qualifying will be where it's all going to play out first and foremost. But that is then. But for now, we have to say good night, ladies and gentlemen. We have been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.